Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Welcome to this episode of Alien Lizard Humanoids. Tonight we'll be looking at the company LuLaRoe, as well as the documentary made about it on Amazon Prime, LuLaRich. A little play on words there. So first I'll introduce, or have my co-hosts introduce themselves. We'll start with you, Jeff. How you doing?
Very good, very good. My name is Jeff Pincin, and I am a licensed mental health counselor in the state of Delaware and Pennsylvania, and specialize in the treatment of OCD and other anxiety disorders. And, if I wasn't a counselor, guys, what I really wanted to do was be a salesman of wet clothes. Like, I just wanted to sell people clothes that were already wet. Like, they came in the bag, just wet, nasty smelling, destroyed, everything. Turns out nobody really wants to buy them.
I wouldn't think so.
But I was surprised. I mean, I thought there'd be a huge market. Who else is selling wet clothes? There's got to be a niche there somewhere, right?
You would be the only one, I believe.
Yeah, zero competition, really.
Exactly. And that's why I thought I would succeed.
Well, maybe LuLaRoe. They were actually, maybe they knocked you out of the game, huh?
That probably what did it. I mean, but so it turns out nobody wanted to buy them. I was left with tens of thousands of dollars worth of wet clothes that nobody wanted to buy. And so I decided, well, here's my second best, a counselor.
Oh, that's rough.
Sometimes you got to take what you can get.
Yeah, right. I appreciate the support.
Couldn't just dry the clothes off and sell them. That wouldn't be the same.
No, I didn't have that much space. I mean, the dryer was broken after doing all that. It was, yeah. So counselor, just had to settle in this life of helping people.
Yeah.
Another tough break that ends with a counselor.
Yeah, right. Thanks, guys.
Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Name's Mike Smith, also a licensed professional counselor in the state of Delaware, specializing in narrative therapy and geek therapy, and I'm a self-styled expert in all things geek. And if I hadn't become a counselor, I think what I really was looking at doing was being an attorney, but like a class action attorney, because they make tons of money, just tons of money. Class action lawsuits bring in lots of money, but just all the law school, like legal stuff, like I can listen to people all day long, but trying to memorize all the laws and things just was boring. And I kept falling asleep during exams, and it was terrible. So, counselor.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mike.
Yeah. Precedents, that's the word I was looking for. Trying to memorize precedents and things like that. See, that's why I couldn't become a lawyer.
Well, you fell asleep when they were teaching you about precedents.
Yeah. And torts. I kept hearing tarts. Thinking about like people running around on the streets. Get that tart over there. Old 50s thing.
The law is fascinating at times, but other times it is excruciatingly boring, I would imagine. Just having seen so many attorneys kind of doing their thing, and especially if you look at like administrative law, contract law, whatever, there's situations where they're literally fighting over a comma for a half hour. Now, I like commas.
Comma's a good, a good.
How do you guys feel about the Oxford comma?
Oh, I always use the Oxford.
Big fan? Yeah, I agree. Big fan.
Always use the Oxford.
Not letting it go.
Yeah, APA style. It's part of APA style, so it's like, yeah. But yeah, so it's not all glamour, I guess. But still, to have to drop the counselor. Ooh.
Right. Wow. I mean, I was looking for that experience in like Law and Order or The Good Wife or something like that. Just contract law with civil actions and it's like it's not like that at all.
Just ripped right out of your hands.
Oh yeah.
I picture you with like a bookshelf full of these boring law books, and that was your dream. Like, I just want this picture in front of these boring law books. But
and instead, I have this picture of all of these lovely Post-it notes.
It's exciting.
It is. It's bright. It's colorful. It's wonderful.
So this case, LuLaRoe, is hysterical, frightening, eye-opening. It's got really everything. It does not have murder, which is good.
Yeah. Thankfully,
right? But it does have pretty much everything else.
Yeah.
Given the amount of money and things that were going on, I wouldn't be surprised if we dug deep enough, we found a few suicides involved with the investors, especially the lowest level distributors involved. But yeah, not murder.
There were a lot of lives that were really just shattered through the actions of the people at the top and decisions made about policy and things like that, where people were making incredible amount of money, but it was just kind of ripped from them unexpectedly. So you're right. There's probably a lot of people that were very, I don't know, probably just went into deep states of, I would imagine, depression. Actually, they talked about that in the documentary. So
all kinds of mood dysphoria. Like they were anxious, depressed. In some cases, probably panicking about, like, especially when they were getting clothes that was damaged, and not knowing what to do. I think that was probably not that much. It was probably overplayed a little bit, but trying to chase the unicorns, which we'll talk about, like all that stress of like. It's just amazing that people found anything of value with those leggings. Like they're all just a mess to me. I don't know. Like
buttery soft.
Yeah,
I can't get over that description of these leggings being buttery soft.
It was the woman's affect too, and she was saying it like you could see that it was just activating all kinds of centers in her brain, like going back to those buttery soft leggings.
It was just such an experience that she was just there experiencing these buttery soft leggings.
It's like she zoned out. Like you can see her she's gone.
Hey, if you have an experience like that, it's wonderful. I'm just saying. Like I've had some blankets every once in a while that are really nice and soft, and you pull them on, you're just like, oh God.
I'm with you on that.
I never want to come out from underneath this blanket ever again.
I'm with you on that, but
I suppose
experience.
I suppose it could be leggings. It could give you the same kind of thing.
I guess, but anytime you can bring up unicorns, I think you've got a winner.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's hear a little history, kind of a little background about LuLaRoe, and then we'll kind of pick up and go through our analysis of this company and MLMs, multi-level marketing companies in general.
Yeah. So we've got DeAnne, Brady, and Mark Stidham. All right. So the husband and wife and owners of this company, founders of this company. LuLaRoe, the name came from 3 names of their grandchildren. So they incorporated in 2013. DeAnne started with reselling skirts. So she found some that were cheap, kind of at a wholesale cost. She would buy them, and then people started expressing interest in buying them from her. Now she had just bought them, I believe, for her kids, if I remember correctly. And they had a lot of kids. 14, I believe, 14 kids together. Some adopted, but 14 kids. So it's a large family.
It wasn't like two of the adopted ones actually married each other.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
But to be fair, as they did point out in the documentary, those two had never lived in the same house together. They didn't grow up together, completely separate, and just happened to meet after being adopted.
We'll leave it at that for now, I guess. So buy the skirts, resell them, and that's kind of how the business started. People started expressing interest in buying them from her, and it grew from there, and then people started expressing interest in joining with her, and then, so it grew from there. So we'll also note that DeAnne and Mark, members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or the LDS Church, as some might call it. Many of their kids, relatives got involved in the business, even though they weren't qualified necessarily for their roles. Maybe not necessarily at a small level, but definitely not at a scaled level of the business that it would become. So the message that they started to sell along with that was empowerment, specifically to women, empowering women, specifically women that could work from home, be a stay-at-home mom, but also work at the same time. And they push this message of full-time income for part-time work. Okay, so we already start to see a glimpse of what I would call a get-rich-quick kind of thing. Like, don't work that many hours, but you're going to get paid as if you were working full-time. So don't work that much, but you're going to get paid a lot. So there's kind of an inherent promise almost in there that you'll do minimal work, but you get paid a lot for it. So we'll talk more about it, but the company grew very rapidly. By the end of 2016, they had $1.3 billion in revenue, 60,000 consultants or retailers, people that were working for them, actually selling the clothes and kind of building up their sales team. And then by the following year, by 2017, 80,000 consultants and so forth. So we'll talk more about that, but a business that grew very rapidly. People at the top, DeAnne and Mark, that stuck with it. The business is still open, so there's still an operation. despite everything we'll talk about that happened with them. And yeah, so there's a lot of stuff that happened with them. So we'll get into that now.
Yeah, that's an important note because, when you see these, this one was on Amazon Prime, but there's a lot on Netflix, a lot of documentaries on Hulu, like all over. But usually with these documentaries, things don't end well for the subject of the documentary.
Yeah, typically.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a disaster story.
Yeah.
This one is still a disaster story, but the company seems to be doing okay. Like they have 18,000, something like that, retailers at this point. They call them consultants. So still pretty big.
It's kind of like if the Poseidon adventure had happened and the cruise ship had flipped upside down and then they got it righted and parked it at the dock. Like,
yeah, it was soggy, but otherwise okay.
Soggy, stinky, but otherwise okay.
Did you ever see the original? It was Ernest Borgnine, I think, was the original, and Gene Hackman.
Oh, yeah.
It was actually very well acted, even though it was kind of corny because back then the special effects
were not the greatest.
The upside down ship didn't work out too well. But I remember going to the Wax Museum in, I think it's in Anaheim, California. I think so. The big famous wax museum.
Madame Tussauds.
What is it?
Is that Madame Tussauds?
I don't know what it's called, but it's a pretty, I think it's somewhat near Disney. Okay. It was a long time ago when I went there. Maybe like near Knott's Berry Farm and Disney, something like that. But either way, there was you go into these different, wax scenarios, and one of them was Poseidon Adventure. And it was, so you're standing in like an upside down ship, sort of like really small. I was a kid, so everything was bigger, But I took an interest, and then I, some years later watched that movie, and I thought, it's actually a pretty decent movie. I saw it more recently as well. You wouldn't think it's about a ship that tips over, that capsizes.
The acting still holds up.
Mm-hmm.
The special effects don't, but the acting does.
Gene Hackman's underrated actor. So yeah, sort of like that, right? A ship kind of rolling over in the water. That's kind of what LuLaRoe is, but
only it goes 360 instead of just 180.
Mm-hmm.
And then they park it at the docks.
Before we start, I was wondering if you guys have any experience with MLMs, with multi-level marketing companies. You ever somebody tried to get you into one, or you ever saw one and didn't realize what it was, and oh, that looks like a good idea. Anything like that?
Yeah, actually, I interviewed years ago for a company that sold air purifiers, but it was definitely an MLM. They brought people in and went through this whole spiel and interviews to see who would get in. And it's okay, well, it sounds like you can make a lot of money with this. That's great, but kind of the thing that one of the questions they asked was kind of what's your yearly income like now? And I didn't get in because at the time I was unemployed, looking for a job. And I put nothing. So they're thank you, see you, bye. Because I had no money to buy in to the MLM. So they were just yeah, we have no use for you.
Dodged a bullet there.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I dealt with a lot of people that got caught in these MLMs. Years ago, in the 80s, Amway was the big one, sometimes referred to as Scamway. But I'm not going to say they're a scam.
They walked into that one, though.
But
Amway scam, that's pretty.
But some people might think they are. I think, they defend themselves pretty vigorously, saying that they're a legitimate business that does direct sales. Okay, but I certainly seen some kind of what I think is not the best feature of MLMs in various Amway people. I don't know if that's sponsored by corporate or whatever, but in the 80s and 90s, Amway was massive with the tiers, with the pyramid-looking object or whatever you want to call it. I don't know if they do that so much anymore. I had people approach me with prepaid legal and dealt with people who were in there and lost money, like most everybody does with every MLM, just their initial investment. Never LuLaRoe. I can't remember anybody getting involved with LuLaRoe.
I remember over the years just seeing people talking about it on Facebook or something, or on social media, just hey, I'm having this party and and I never knew what it was. I didn't really care. It was women's clothing. What is this? But now looking back on it, I remember the kind of in the documentary, in the docuseries, the kind of language they would encourage, hashtags and all this and that. I remember seeing that and I'm like, okay, this looks exactly like what everyone in this company talked about in this docuseries. For some reason, a lot of friends of mine are involved in these multi-level marketing things, and maybe not even friends, but just people that I know. It's very popular in the American church, multi-level marketing, things like that. Mm-hmm. And they kind of, from my experience, equate the two. So like you've got spirituality, and then here, take care of your body too, or take care of yourself, and they kind of like put them together, right? So if you're taking care of your spirit, take care of your body too. It's like the same thing. You've got to do it, right? It's got to. And I heard this quote once from somebody that I know, and they were serious about it. They were trying to market whatever they were doing, and it was essential oils. It's a big one out there, and they said this, and I couldn't believe it, but they were serious. They thought they were serious. They said the essential oil will rid your kidneys of demons.
Kidney stones are really painful, but if you step up to kidney demons, you're on a whole nother level.
I can't imagine that, just having kidney demons.
They're like dragging stones around your kidneys.
Right, because they're demons and they're just going to do that.
Well, they're demons. It's not just stones. They have like maces and flails. They're just like beating on your kidneys.
Very long sticks.
So I couldn't believe it. And I'm like,
trying to pass one of those?
Well, you got to use oils. That's all you got to do is use an oil.
You got to drown them in oil.
Right.
Oh, and that's why they're essential.
That's why they're essential. I always wondered what's so essential about them. But
apparently, they get rid of the kidney demons.
Apparently. So I couldn't believe it. I'm like, wait a minute. So you're telling me not only did this oil go into your kidneys somehow, but there's already demons in there and it gets them out? This is incredible. Like, why isn't this the pitch for the entire company?
And I could be wrong, but as far as I know, like essential oils are just supposed to put into like a diffuser and have them go up into the air or something like that.
I think you can consume them as well.
I don't think you're supposed to.
I don't know you're supposed to, but they always say you can if that's what you're into. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know how they would get to the kidney demons.
I don't know. Maybe it's like a targeted kind of thing. Like there's a little demon oil that like makes its way in. I don't know.
I can see, like, if you want to sell essential oils and be like, hey, this one smells really nice, put it in your diffuser and it can make a really nice atmosphere in your home. I'm like, okay, great. Like, people buy scented candles for the same reason. But when it gets down to, like, that'll get rid of the demons.
Then you're into kidneys. Something else.
That's a little far.
Yeah. So for that reason, when I was younger, and, when you're younger, you're looking for a job and like, that's the kind of people they prey on, right? Is like, hey, you're looking for a job, join this thing with me or whatever. And it's appealing, right? Because it's like, okay, so you're saying you can make a lot of money. There's not a lot of work to be done. You just have to talk to people. You just have to whatever,
And then you became a counselor. Like that was the pitch line for becoming a counselor.
Yeah, there it is.
There's almost no work involved. No work involved. You just got to sit down on the couch and talk to people and listen. That's it.
That's it. And so it's appealing, right? And that's why so many people get into it. And people that just want a little bit extra income or whatever. And so I definitely, there were times I remember people that I would know, I'd see that and be like, oh, that's appealing, And then you start to realize just what they're doing and how it comes off to me as desperate. Like they're trying so hard to push these things. And at some point you're like, nah, I'm not, this isn't okay. I see what you're doing here and it's not okay. Like I get you're trying to make a living and that's cool, but the tactics that are sometimes deployed for it they're pretty rough sometimes. So it's a tough thing to do.
Yeah. There's a pretty big overlap. Now, I've seen a few of their presentations they've done, like the MLMs. I assume they're pretty much all the same, but I don't know that. But I have kind of noticed similarities between them. There's always kind of like a top person near anyone you talk to, right? Who's really, actually fairly gifted with like public speaking and being motivational. Reminds me of kind of like Travis Alexander, what he must have been like in the Jodi Arias case. He was described as like really good at making up stories or whatever you do for that, just making stuff up, but and being personable and extroverted. But it's they invite people to like these meetings, and they often have them in like conference rooms in hotels, like the little conference rooms and the small hotels. Mm-hmm. And then there's like that leader of the little group, the upline, who gets up there, and it's very much like a preacher, right? And they don't tell people who are going in there what company it is, because people would run. Like Amway, oh, thanks, no thanks. Prepaid legal, all of them pretty much. You'd be like, no. Now I know some of the other ones like LuLaRoe are a little different because the way they hook people are through the sales. Mm-hmm. But that's, based on what I understand, it's not really how Amway, Prepaid Legal, and many others do it. It's more like just going out and talking to people you might encounter. And be like, do you want to make money? Things like that. So they get the people in here.
Who's going to say no?
Right. Well, they get the people in there, and there might be 50 people at one of these events, whatever. And they don't talk, again, immediately about what it is they're doing. It's very general. Like, is money good? Sure. Do you want to make money? Sure. Are you making as much money as you'd like? No. Like they're getting, the answers are predictable.
Right? You could ask that question to like millionaires. Be like, are you making as much money as you want to be making? And the millionaires can be like, no, I need to make more.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's kind of obvious. And they're trying to sell you on essentially something you already believe. Like, do you think you could make more? Do you think you're valuable? Do you want to represent something larger? Again, everybody's going to be like, sure, yeah, that sounds great, sense of purpose. And it's very light on details.
Right. And they go into things like, I'm not trying to sell you something new. I'm not trying to give you something you don't already have. You've got all the, and this was right in the thing, like you've got all the puzzle pieces inside you. You just have to figure out how to put it together. And it's like, and we can help you figure that out. Like they go through that whole thing. It's like, wait, this is LuLaRoe, right? It's clothes. Like when are you going to mention the clothes? Like at all?
Yeah, it's not about, it's all about trying to sell you on something you already believe. Of course, it's not real, right? Like the promises they make aren't real, but they're trying to get you to kind of think to yourself that you haven't been assertive enough. You haven't committed to wanting money enough. Almost like the law of attraction. Positivity attracts money. Mm-hmm. If you target something, you'll bring it to yourself, like a tractor beam in Star Trek or whatever. So it's like their whole sales pitch is based on the obvious answers. And then it's like the small print at the bottom, like a LuLaRoe, send $5,000 for crappy leggings, right? And it's like, the details, I think what MLMs understand is that whatever they're selling, that detail turns people off typically. Mm-hmm. When you're trying to get somebody like into the opportunity. Now with LuLaRoe, it might be slightly different because a lot of people do like their leggings and that's why they get involved.
Right.
Like I mentioned before, like no one's going to be using legal services and saying, I really like legal services. I wonder if there's some place that, no one's going to do that.
It's like, wait a minute. You got legal insurance? How do I get signed up for this? Like
that legal insurance looks great. Look at that pattern on there.
Wow.
It's buttery soft.
Look at the buttery soft sheen on that white paper there. That's amazing.
On those court documents. Wow.
I think one of the other areas where LuLaRoe actually was innovative in the MLM community, I think others have done this too, but not quite to the extent, was the exclusivity factor.
Right.
Like they really pushed that you can't come into this company until we're ready to let you come in.
Right. You're lucky, sort of, right? You're lucky if we invite you in.
Which prompted people to be like, well, wait, I want to be part of this. Because when you're told you're not allowed in, everybody wants in.
It's a rarity gimmick. Yeah. Right? Like, you're not part of the family. That's another thing they did with LuLaRoe that you don't see too much with other MLMs, was they really pushed the family. Like you're part of a community. So highly, in my opinion, highly deceptive, right? Because family is a very different structure than a business. And I think just like they kind of blur religion in there, they're blurring family in there. Mm-hmm. So, you have, sounds like mostly the LDS, very traditional beliefs, with the family beliefs, and now leggings.
An obvious extension.
Yeah. Dangerous combination.
I think that's where all churches tend to go. Beliefs, family, leggings. That's where they all go.
I think that's where they all end up starting to fall down.
I think they also had maxi dresses and some types of tops, blouses or something. I don't know. But apparently they had more than leggings. Mm-hmm. But the leggings were the big things, and that's where they drove the pattern demand, like they kept trying to make new patterns, which they took from Google searches.
Started stealing eventually. Yeah.
I like the rule. The one designer's like, I never heard this in a legal forum, but change it by 20% or something.
Right.
Well, where do you get what?
I've actually heard that somewhere before. And it's like if you can change up to 20%, it's no longer copyright infringement or something like that. But I don't know. But I think, the leggings thing, that's where religion gets into trouble. Like I'm not a historical scholar, but if I had to guess, I think that, Martin Luther nailing stuff up was because of leggings. Like the whole Protestant Reformation, that was leggings.
He wanted to nail leggings up there. That's what I heard.
Right. The Catholic Church got into leggings. And he was like, enough, had it.
I'm nailing them on the door.
They were so buttery soft, they flew right off. He's like, how about this declaration instead?
How about these 99 theses?
This is my backup plan.
But it was all about the leggings. You heard it here first.
Right. He had the demands written on the leggings, but then, just...
That was the pattern.
Right. That was the pattern. But they got the pattern wrong, and it was all wet when it got there, so he couldn't nail them up. It was terrible.
And it was falling apart.
It was falling apart.
So he had to get some parchment,
Right.
which would actually hold together better.
Yeah. So LuLaRoe, we'll kind of go through here in some more detail, how this progression, but this was a company that grew very fast.
Super fast.
Right. I think even before they were incorporated, they were already making money. They're already operating. And again, Jeff, as you mentioned, in 2013, they officially incorporated. They're based in Corona, California, and I thought I read somewhere that they're now in North Carolina, like the factory's in North Carolina, but they're still based in Corona.
I think it's South Carolina.
Oh, was it South Carolina?
What they said, yeah.
So they moved to the Carolinas, I guess, because they needed more space or whatever. Didn't want to store stuff outside.
Which is where they were, which came into the whole wet leggings thing.
Mm-hmm. If only. Could have been me.
Right, could have been you. But...
So they're both members of LDS, and DeAnne was from a large family, number 10 of 11. So I imagine being efficient with clothing and having like passed down clothing was probably a part of what she learned, like survival.
Yeah.
She sold clothes out of her trunk, and Mark said he was also oriented toward business, and they met on an airplane, which I don't know if it's something that can happen anymore with the corona, right? Because everybody's wearing the mask.
It's unlikely to happen. I mean, people still can meet and talk and whatnot, be sat next to people, but it's unlikely you're going to strike up that kind of a conversation when your face is covered.
Yeah, almost all people like to think differently, and I get it, but almost all attraction is based on physical, right? And really nothing else. I mean, if you took out the physical attraction piece, people would just fly off like rockets without fins. Like it gives order to everything. People look at physical attractiveness, they make their decision based on that, and then they find other reasons to like the person if they're physically attractive. Oh, they're so smart. Oh, they're so sensitive. Mm-hmm. Well, if they weren't physically attractive, then no, that would, So with the mask, I could picture people kind of like, okay, I'm not really sure about the attractiveness because there's a major part missing. And then, maybe they follow up later on a Zoom and they're like, oh, like when they think,
I mean,
it was nice talking to you.
To an extent, that is absolutely true. Talking and getting to know somebody without seeing their face can build up that sense of attraction.
It could build it in advance,
and it can build it to the point where the physical stuff isn't as important. Right. But you've already developed a relationship at that point, which is the more important part of things. Right? But we're looking at meeting new people. Physical attraction is very, very important.
Oh yeah.
You guys watch Seinfeld, or did you watch Seinfeld?
Oh yeah, every single one.
Remember that episode when Jerry was going out with this woman, and if they sat in the one seat in the restaurant, he was like, "Oh gosh, who are you?" And they sat in the other seat, and he's like, "Oh, that's better."
It was all the lighting. It was all the lighting. She's very, very dark.
He goes, "George, you'll never believe it. Sit here. What are you talking about, Jerry?"
I saw Jerry Seinfeld did an interview recently where he's talking about how he wished he could go back and redo some of the episodes, but just for comedic value, it sounds like, not for any other reason. But he was defending his decision to get out at season, was it 10? What did they do?
Something like that.
9, 10? Everybody's upset when they stopped. Mm-hmm. But his logic was, that made him a legend. And if he had continued, people would have hated him eventually. And my philosophy is always just run it out. Run it out. See what happens.
I had a boss at a camp that I worked at. His philosophy was kill it before it dies. And that was a pretty good philosophy for him because at the camp, if people got tired of what they had there, they'd be like, oh, I'm not going to come here anymore, potentially. So I thought that was pretty good, but I can understand that, like, just run it till it dies as well. So I can see both sides.
Yeah, we'll look at The Simpsons. In the history of The Simpsons, there's many times where fans have been upset. They're like, oh, it's getting stale. Mm-hmm. And they could have said, well, let me get out and we could still be a legend. They just kept their foot to the floor and it's turned out okay.
Yeah.
They had some rougher seasons and some much better seasons. And what's that, 33? Season 33, I think, just started.
I think so, yeah.
I think it was a musical episode I saw in the first episode of 33.
I missed it.
I don't like the musical ones as much, but I do appreciate the effort they put in.
Yeah.
Especially with the lyric. Like it's still funny.
Oh, the best one, though, the best musical episode was the clip show early on where Snake came in to rob the place and was like, shh, no more singing. It was great. And then, like, in the closing credits, the music starts to come up, and he's like, I mean it. Starts coming up again. Blam! Shh!
Their ability to laugh at themselves,
great. Oh, yeah.
Is one of the things that makes that great. They're willing to take a character on there and be like, no, you're not going to sing this one. That's pretty good.
Yeah, so anyway, tangent on Seinfeld.
And The Simpsons.
And The Simpsons.
2 for 1.
Yeah. Two very good shows, but Jerry should have stayed in there. Yeah, because the whole cast now, I feel like, looks back like that was the glory days. I'm like, he could have stayed in it for like 2-3 more seasons. Either way.
Michael Richards took himself out.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. That was bad. So anyway, these guys meet on a plane. And I think I heard this right. 14 children, many adopted.
But between the two of them.
Right. Yeah. 14 children. So that's a pretty large quantity of children. But it sounds like they had the money, with the business. And they came out with the maxi dresses. They added the leggings. That's what really exploded. And in the beginning, they were charging, it was approximately $5,000 to buy in. Mm-hmm. And the idea is you're getting that much in wholesale product. And then if you sell it, you'll make, who knows what, twice that, 3 times that.
I think when she's like, okay, we sell it to you at $10 per item. And then you sell it to the consumer for like $30 per item and kick back to us like $5. And then you've made 15% profit or $15 in profit off of that, which means like you bought the item for $10 and you made 15 off of selling it after giving us back, $5 off of each item, which means like you can make a ton of money off of this $5,000 worth of stuff because you're marking it up 3 times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the promise was, I guess you could turn that 5 into 10 or more, right? By that logic,
because they could sell it at whatever price point they wanted to. They just were and that's I think where it struck me as like, wait a minute, this is a bit shady, right? It was the kickback to the company. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, so I have to buy this product wholesale,
right? Which means you own it.
I'm buying this product, means it's mine. Mm-hmm. But then when I sell it, I have to take a percentage of that out and give it back to LuLaRoe before I can keep the rest for myself.
Makes no sense. Yeah.
And then when I run out of product, I have to buy more. Mm-hmm. So I've got to make sure I'm saving some of that profit to buy more product.
I forget what they said in the docuseries. I remember the first tier or whatever was like a little bit over $5,000, but it went up to like 10 or 11,000 was the top. Was that just more? It was
almost 10. It was more product.
Was that just more product? Was that the only thing you were getting with that?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know
like a gold or platinum. They always put things like that. Like buy at the platinum level.
Yeah. Right.
You get more product per dollar or whatever.
Probably.
But I think what they were getting was more like more trainings involved in each one. Yeah. So they would get more of these incentives to to be in there, and all bigger chance for a bonus check to come in. Of course, most of the bonus checks were based on how many more people you could bring into the company.
Right. Let's talk about that. Yeah. So that's an interesting spin. Now, when you talk about multi-level marketing companies, MLMs, they run into a pyramid scheme issue unless they kind of, I don't know what the formula is, but there's a way they balance direct sales with recruiting.
Right.
Now, what MLMs are famous for, and what LuLaRoe did, is they overemphasized recruiting because that was the only way you could make any real money.
Right.
When the only thing that really helps the company in the end, and the people, the consultants, is direct sales. You have to generate new money based on product moving, not an endless expansion because you're going to run out of population. And you're going to create intense competition for your existing consultants.
Which is exactly what they did.
Yeah. Why do I need 100 people in my area that sell LuLaRoe if I like it? 2 would probably be plenty.
Yeah.
You know,
It's one of those where if you're selling it wholesale to your distributors, you're not making money on the product. So their money coming in from selling the product was that kickback from each item, that percentage. But that was a very small amount in comparison to the major amount of money they could get from somebody buying in.
the
$5,000 to $9,000. It was, as of 2017, it was $9,000 was the cap on it. Yeah, you give me $4,925 and you can have all of these clothes and you can sell them. But if you get up to $9,000 and buy in, we'll give you the clothes and a bunch of tutelage of how to do this. We'll pair you with somebody who can walk you through the process of setting up your boutique and going through all of this and follow these rules and everything. And you get a chance to win a raffle to go to one of our amazing shows and one of our amazing conventions.
with Mario Lopez.
Mario Lopez was that one, yeah.
They got him for cheap.
For cheap.
Or Katy Perry.
Yeah, and Kelly Clarkson, right? Yeah.
And Kelly Clarkson, yeah.
Yeah, so you could, that was the whole idea, is you basically had this non-exclusive deal to be a retailer. So you buy wholesale, you sell retail, but your competitors are the people you're selling to. Your customers become your competitors if they buy in. But if enough of them buy in, you get elevated. I have these levels typed up here somewhere, but it was like mentor, coach, like just nonsense, like just words they're throwing around have no meaning, but they're you're moving up a pyramid-like structure, kind of like a triangle.
I think wasn't it retailer, then coach, then mentor, I believe? I think mentor was the top.
Mentor was definitely the top. And
It was at trainer. So it was trainer.
It was
coach,
the bottom
mentor.
was consultants.
Consultant.
They were fashion consultants instead of distributors. Fashion consultants. And then they went up to the...
They went to trainer, then coach, and then in mentor, you were at the top of the pyramid-like structure.
Right. And you could become a coach by getting, it was like 10 people underneath of you.
A trainer's 10, a coach was 3 trainers, and a mentor was 3 coaches.
Yeah.
And I think at the mentor, was that when you got that gold watch?
Yeah.
So everyone loved this gold watch that they would get for being a mentor, and it was like, oh my gosh, if you had the watch, then you're big stuff here, right? And you're like the best. These promises of you get to these new levels and you'll be viewed as this, better person or better salesperson or whatever, and you'll get these gifts that are exclusive, and of course they're not going to emphasize sell your soul and you get to this level and never see your kids.
It's just sell your breast milk.
Right. It's exactly. To buy in, do whatever it takes. Yeah,
they were talking about buying. From what I heard, like a lot of the media attention around that was they told people to sell their breast milk. But from what I remember from the documentary, and I could be wrong, I could have missed something. It was one particular woman decided to do this to build up the capital, and then they just used that as an example of what people were willing to do to buy into LuLaRoe. As part of the distributors. They didn't actually say, you should do this.
I don't think it was in their marketing material.
I don't think it was in their marketing material to, you should sell your breast milk. It was just like, look, this woman did this. She sold her breast milk. That's how much she wanted to be in this company. So if you want to be in this company, you should go to any lengths to do it. Kind of not directly saying you should sell your breast milk, but not not saying that.
Right.
It would have been better for them to say, look, we're not saying go sell your breast milk. That's an extreme case.
Yeah, but they would say borrow money.
But yeah, they would absolutely say borrow money, take out loans, get credit cards, whatever you need to do, because you'll pay them off in the first month.
Yeah, it sounds like they may have strayed into an earnings claim situation, which is another problem, and probably, I don't know if that was part of the many lawsuits or whatever, but
I believe so. Yeah.
Earnings claims are definitely a no-no. But yeah, I mean, it seems like too, maybe all the information didn't come directly from LuLaRoe. There was a network of these people, the mentors and coaches that could say things on Facebook and that could not really be part of their policy, but people see that and they think, oh, that's what LuLaRoe's saying. Puts them in a tough spot.
To the point you were mentioning just a moment ago about how the competition, they basically ended up competing with themselves. Like the distributors, the fashion consultants were competing with other fashion consultants in the area. It speaks to where they were aiming their base at, which was kind of the poorer rural areas rather than urban areas. There was a Quartz magazine noted that LuLaRoe had 10 distributors in Manhattan, which is a population of 1.6 million, and 10 distributors in Pueblo, Colorado, which has a population of 110,000. Mm-hmm. This is very disproportionate. And they'd be stepping all over each other in Pueblo trying to get things. But what DeAnne and Mark would say would be like, well, it doesn't matter because they had different patterns.
Right.
They would get different patterns, different products, so they weren't stepping over each other because they could still sell because they didn't have the same stuff. It wasn't like you'll go into GameStop over here on Kirkwood Highway, which is in Delaware, and GameStop over here in the mall, and you get this exact same stuff there. But with the LuLaRoe stuff, it was all different. Yeah, yes, it was leggings and maxi dresses and a limited number of specific things, but it was the patterns on them that were all unique because they only ran 3,000 or 5,000.
I think it was 5,000
of any given pattern before they discontinued it.
And they were cranking out. I don't forget. It was some incredible amount a day. Their pressure to generate new patterns was over the top.
Yeah.
And of course, that resulted in some fairly comical fails that they featured.
I think did the one woman say that she had to put out 100 new patterns a day or something along those lines?
It was some numbers unbelievable.
Not even attainable, really. I've never created patterns, but I imagine that's not really attainable in one day.
They were shipping at their height 350,000 units a day, and if there's only 5,000 of any given pattern, that's an insane number of patterns they have to have because they run out of that one pattern in a day.
Yeah. I mean, really, and I guess at that point in a few minutes.
Yeah. It'd be that's a lot of different patterns. I mean, it seems unrealistic, and I think it affected the quality of the patterns.
70 different patterns
per day.
Yeah.
That come and go.
Yeah. Come and go in one day.
Yeah,
70 patterns.
And certain patterns would catch on. The ones that maybe didn't have some bizarre things, in weird places.
They didn't have bees crawling into certain areas that were not flattering.
Yeah, there were certain regions where they didn't really check before they printed.
Like a hamburger in a very inopportune place.
Some of them almost look so you're thinking you did this deliberately, right? This was
almost intentional.
It almost looked that way on some of them. It's like this can't have been an accident.
Yeah, this was somebody playing with a machine. I'm gonna hit the button.
Just mad at the company. I'll get you.
They're seeing it come up on the screen. Oh yeah, we're running this thing.
Oh yeah,
this is perfect.
Yeah, they're also adding 500 consultants a day. 500. Incredible.
Yeah. At their height, they had 80,000 distributors, 80,000 consultants.
They had people on a wait list.
Oh, yeah.
Right, which is, it speaks to how much this message was the message that LuLaRoe was sending out to women, it speaks to how much that resonated with them. You know, like, oh, I can stay home. I don't have to go out of my house and work anymore, or or I can have extra income and my family can be more financially secure, or isn't this great? I can sell sell the clothing that I love so much, whatever. And so people literally lining up and being told to just wait, and you have to wait in this.
It was several weeks, right?
Something like that.
It could be months.
To hand the money.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna wait to give you thousands of dollars. Yeah.
And that was that exclusivity we mentioned. Like it was so much that is for some it was at first, I think it was they just had so many people wanting to come on that they had to set up a wait list because they only had enough people to onboard enough people per day. But as the company grew, it became their tactic. Mm-hmm. It became okay, we'll put them on the wait list. And I know that it was that became their tactic because they started doing the raffles at the conventions.
Mm-hmm. They'd invite the people on the wait list to the conventions and say, "We're going to hold a raffle. Some of you will be randomly chosen to be onboarded that day, or to be allowed to be onboarded that day."
And they'd be given a card in like a playing card in a sleeve.
Right.
And when they checked in as part of their welcome package thing, and then they'd sit around in the raffle. They'd be like, anybody who has a King of Hearts today is going to be onboarded. And so everybody would be checking their cards, and it would freak out. Oh my goodness, I won. And it's like that air of exclusivity hit like really hard. And they were just like, let's keep up the exclusivity.
And of course, there were women that came there, people that came there that didn't get onboarded that day, like didn't get chosen. And they would spend, I'm sure, thousands of dollars, or at the very least hundreds, to go to the convention, to make it there, with flights and, I don't know, hotel rooms and whatever else.
Almost like a pilgrimage.
Yeah. Just for the chance to be able to buy into a company.
And I think to prove their faith, right? That seemed to be a big part of it. There's a parallel to religion. It's like, you don't believe in yourself, and you don't believe in us unless you come spend money and attend this conference where Mario Lopez is taking pictures of people. Right. Like it's proving that you believe in the system. It's more than just the money. And then you do that, and then you might be lucky enough to hand them your money earlier. So,
one of my favorite parts of the documentary was they were talking about this. The guy who the one they put in charge of the advertising stuff, who had like no clue what he was doing. They were like put him in charge of running these conventions, and the very first one they had him on a strict budget. Something like $4 million or something like that. He couldn't spend any more than that. He was like, no, you're not allowed to spend any more than this. And it went over, and that's where he got the Mario Lopez and everything. And the very next one, they were like, you don't have a budget anymore. Just go wild. And he rented out the like a football stadium and got Katy Perry to come in and do a show, and just like insane amounts of money just throwing it at these events. But they became incredibly popular.
They spent millions to put these things on and have the entertainment and the security and setup and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it spoke to how much money LuLaRoe itself was making too, that they could just throw money endlessly at things.
But if they dropped like $50 million on one of those conventions, in that year they made $1 billion.
Right. Yeah.
So that was a nothing. Yeah. That was a write-off.
Right.
Well, they rented entire cruise ships too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And cruise ships cost between $500 million and $1 billion to build. Not that they were buying the ship, but they're expensive to rent based on the initial capital investment that companies make in them. So,
but I think one of the most messed up part about the cruise ship thing was they were pushing their higher level people, all of the coaches and the mentors to make their sales goals, to make their dollar goals, and to make their recruitment goals, so they could be invited onto the cruise ship. And then they made them pay their own way on the cruise ship. They made them buy their own tickets, pay for their own food, pay for their own stuff. Like they had to pay for everything out of pocket to go to this thing. And if they didn't go to, they might not get invited to other things. Right. And then they would start taking a hit.
They're not showing their faith.
Yeah, their bonus checks were on the line.
Yeah.
And those were some big bonus checks.
Yeah, I think some of them made over 100,000 in a year. So they said, or 60 or something. It was a lot.
I think the biggest one they mentioned was like $320,000.
Yeah, not for direct selling.
No, not for direct selling.
That was for these overrides based on being a mentor, probably a mentor at that level. But
right. I mean, it's one of those like I think the average annual commission earned from downline distributors, from each distributor, was like $85. But when you got up to like the mentor level, you had like 5,000 people beneath you. That's $85 from all of them.
yeah, so for the people that got in early, there was a golden age for them.
Yeah.
There was one woman, I don't remember her name or if they gave her name, but it looked like she bought 2 Chevy Tahoes.
Yeah.
And a house. I don't know if she bought the house too, but they showed her with 2 Tahoes and a house behind her. And she was an upline to many downline people. And then I think at the end they got repossessed and the house got foreclosed. And I think this goes back to what Jay Leno said a while ago about when people give you big money, like when young actors come into Hollywood and they get one film and they never work again, they're bankrupt even though they made $20 million or whatever, and then for the one, he's like, these people are going to hand you a bunch of money, hold on to it. I think he's absolutely right? So she was buying those vehicles on credit. So probably what happened was she made a lot of money in 1 month and then started thinking, if I make $5,000 or $10,000 every month for the next 50 years, I'll have, whatever. Yeah. And starts buying on credit.
Right.
I mean, they weren't very good with their money.
Right.
But the thing that she wasn't counting, I was like, yeah, she got this check for, $45,000, and be like, oh, I could pay off everything with $45,000. She wasn't expecting the fact that because she still had to maintain her own distribution, that she was going to end up spending $50,000 on new inventory to bring in, because then she was going to sell some of that to her downline to make some of that money back. And it just ended up breaking even on all of it. That's the biggest problem with these things. You see lots of big upfront money, but then the costs always go right back up to the top.
They had mentioned that as well, that once they realized like just how little they were actually making on selling things, they're like, oh, this is ridiculous. And of course the emphasis on recruiting people and getting those bonus checks and everything. And I think it was that same woman that, maybe not the same one, one of the people in the docuseries said that they went out and had dinner one night and dropped like $10,000 on it, just handed the credit card and, didn't even care about it. And it was that level of just money's coming in and that's all I see. To your point, Dr. Grande, money's coming in and that's all I see. I don't care what else is happening. There's money coming in and I don't think I need to know about anything else. So that was much to their demise because they were just willing to spend because they just had the money.
And for some of them later on, as things kind of went through, they were ones used to making like $17,000 a week with these materials, and then they were in areas where they had recruited so many people in their own area that they were fighting with their own downline for being able to do business, and were making like $15 off of one show. Like they sold one thing. Which, like, when they first started out, especially the early ones on, if they sold one thing, they were ecstatic. Like, I sold one thing, I get a little bit of money.
Right.
And then, like, a couple of years later, once they're used to having, the cha-ching, the bank account just rolling in, it's, hey, look, you can only, go sell $15. What do you mean? I can't afford to get food for my family because I've got so much inventory. And I can't sell it.
Look like they use Facebook Live a lot for the direct sales.
There's a lot of social media push with direct sales and with recruitment.
Yeah, so they would go on Facebook Live and sell out everything they had in view of the camera. But then later on, that became increasingly difficult.
Yeah.
You can tell when, if you know anybody that that does some kind of MLM, you can tell when they've successfully recruited somebody, because they would start by these messages of, buy the stuff or whatever, why ever this stuff is so great or so meaningful or going to change your life, whatever. And then you start to see people, like, you start to notice, people are commenting on this and they're talking pretty highly about this stuff. Mm-hmm. And you kind of, read between the lines and realize, wait a minute, they're selling this stuff now too. That's why they're the ones commenting, so that they can talk it up. So other people hopefully see it and realize, oh, wait, maybe this is such a great thing. Maybe I need this too. And you start to realize they're the only people that are commenting. The other people who sell it, they're the only people who look at these things that these people post. And it creates, it speaks to that competition, because now the only people really that look at these things are people who also sell it. So are you really getting anybody new? You really doing anything with this business other than just talking up someone else's product? And it seems kind of sad to me from the beginning, but definitely at a certain point, you realize this really isn't going anywhere. And maybe they realize that too, but it's kind of sad to see that when it gets to that point.
Yeah, remember I was talking about the groups they have, like they bring everybody together in like a conference room, and they have, again, like 30 or 50 people. Easily half of those people are returning recruits from other, like, prior occasions. And again, it's just like a faith system. Like, you gotta go to church to build up that faith again. Yeah. They're going there and they say, well, I'm here to support, the upline and to spread the message. Well, you don't get paid if they recruit other people. Oh, well, it doesn't matter. It's the mission to promote, to spread the word. The word? Well, that sounds familiar. That really is the mentality. It's not, they lose focus on the utility of money. Like, what do you actually get? It doesn't matter. I'm part of a team now.
A family.
Part of a family. The goals are amorphous. They're squishy. I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just here and being positive for no reason.
That's because nobody knew what they were doing. There was no business plan. Like, there was no, we need to hit these goals to get to this place. No, they just go.
No market research at all.
They did no market research. They just went out and did their thing. Just keep selling. And the upper echelons, DeAnne and Mark, they were just like, you can do this. And if you can't do it, it's because you weren't meant to do it.
That's right.
And I was going to say, going back to the exclusivity, some part of the use of social media included some of that exclusivity. It was, scheduled online events for Facebook Live that required an invitation. So the seller would know who they were going to invite in, but it was a limited number of people that they were going to invite in. It wasn't just like anybody can show up. The only times they had things that anybody could show up to were pop-up boutiques. They would just pop up for a day, and they would just advertise the day before. We're going to be here at this mall in the parking lot. Come buy stuff from LuLaRoe. Or if they were going to do it in person, it was, again, planned parties that they invited specific people to.
Yeah, and a lot of these, I don't know if LuLaRoe emphasized the parties as much, but a lot of these companies do, where they'll have a party and a group will get together in like a living room and they'll show different things, and there's kind of like a pressure for everybody to buy. It's like bringing everything that people hate about sales into your living room.
Right.
Because people love getting sold to.
Right.
Like, that's something that everybody loves.
Going back to the Tupperware parties, right?
Tupperware,
yeah. You have, one person who wants to sell a whole bunch of Tupperware. She invites everybody over to the house to have a party, serves hors d'oeuvres and things, all in the Tupperware containers. You see how well that works? That's only this amount of money.
Look how much this can hold.
Like, right, look how much this can hold. And you can just put the lid on that and let it burp, and then you can take that home with you. But DeAnne was like, you can do the same thing with LuLaRoe, but don't do any kind of refreshments, because people won't eat them. Like, you're just going to waste money making refreshments.
I think she even said they're all on a diet anyway.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I was going to mention, Dr. Grande, you were talking about the, we're part of a family, and people kind of lose sight of the goal, or kind of lose sight of what's going on. And that's a recipe for allowing mismanagement to happen, allowing questionable tactics to happen, allowing questionable business techniques to happen, Which is exactly what we saw with LuLaRoe. You know, people started to question, like, you know, what is this? Started to, I think I'm in a cult. You know, and like this message is becoming less about selling things and more about, like, are you part of this exclusive thing? Are you part of, you know, whatever? And they would say in the docuseries that at some point Mark started preaching out of the LDS Bible as well, or started like saying, you know, I think he even said he compared himself to Joseph Smith. And so like the lines started to blur, right? And people started to get kind of like, oh, this is kind of weird. I don't know and then they started to realize, oh my gosh, I've given my whole life to this. And probably the worst part was the woman's realization, when she was talking about the realization that she was seeing her kids less with doing LuLaRoe, with selling LuLaRoe, than she did when she was working full time, or when she was working, you know, for a regular company. And that realization that, wait a minute, this promise of work part time, that's never achievable. If you want to get to that level that they're pushing for, that's not achievable. I, you know, see my kids and a lot of people, not a lot maybe, but people at those higher levels, their marriages fell apart, you know, because because of a lot of different things, but because of, at least in part, because they had to devote so much time to LuLaRoe, and they were just caught up in this business, but so caught up in this family, and everything was about doing it for LuLaRoe. They couldn't do anything else. It was all about LuLaRoe. And all the lines were blurred, and it ruined a lot of things for a lot of people.
Speaking of marriage, that's where things got, like, to me, it was like super predatory.
Oh, yeah.
Was when, like, some of the higher ups, that they were told by DeAnne and Mark, your husband should quit his job. You're making enough money that your husband should quit his job so that he can take care of the kids, so that you can do this full time. Which again speaks to that, like, their message is full-time pay for part-time work. But now that you're up in the upper echelons, you should make this your full-time focus, and your husband should quit his job and watch the kids and be the stay-at-home dad, because you're now the breadwinner. Which, you know, and just that's fine. And when people were like, when the husband was like, no,
I don't want to do that.
I like my job. I don't want to do that. But that was really another control from LuLaRoe. It was okay. Well, if your husband quits his job, then you have to stay doing this. Yeah. You have to continue doing this, because there's no other income opportunity.
You're dependent now.
You become dependent on LuLaRoe. And they had all sorts of, like, those rules and regulations about LuLaRoe, especially at their main offices. Like, people had to wear LuLaRoe clothes. I remember the one woman who's like, she's walking through wearing Gucci, and they're like, "What is that?" And she's like, "It's Gucci," because she made enough money to buy some Gucci product. She's wearing it proudly, and they're like, "What is that?" And it's like, "It's Gucci," and they're like, "You should be wearing LuLaRoe."
That's not LuLaRoe.
Like, that's not LuLaRoe. You should be wearing it. The art director, it was like she went into, because she thought she was going to get fired, and they're like, "We're going to give you a promotion. We noticed you haven't been wearing a lot of LuLaRoe lately, and we're not going to hold that against you. We're still going to give you the promotion, but you should think about wearing more LuLaRoe more often."
So they just want everybody to look tacky. Right?
Yeah, that was their plan.
And you got to advertise the products you're selling, even when nobody's going to see it, but other people who already own the products.
So we see that things go very well for LuLaRoe for many years. We talked about the year they did over $1 billion. And then they started getting into some trouble. They modified their bonus structure based on actual sales, probably to not get sued. And that ended up cutting the bonuses in half, which is still probably a lot of money for many people. But, you know, as I talked about, I think a lot of people became dependent on whatever their best month was. Like, oh, I'm going to make that now forever. I made $8,000 a month. I'm going to make that forever. It's never going to stop.
Probably going to stop. You know, especially when somebody else starts making $8,000, because the money doesn't just come from nowhere. But they also were running into inventory problems, right? They had a huge warehouse that they filled to capacity, and then they had overflow inventory that they just left out in a parking lot.
Yeah, and shipped it.
And then they shipped it.
They could have covered that with tarps. That probably would have prevented most of their problems. I don't know about the holes, though. That was bugs or what did that, but they could have stopped the water with tarps. And it didn't really look like that much. When they showed that picture on the LuLaRoe documentary, I mean, maybe $1,000 worth of tarps, which is nothing for that company.
Oh, yeah. Right. It would for the amount of tarps it would have been minimal, but there was a lot of product in that parking lot. Like they had just the big rolling cages just filled to the brim, and when they were filling stuff, they'd have their pickers go out and just grab out of these bins and then send them off. And people were getting these clothes in these boxes that had been sitting outside in the wet and the sun and getting moldy and getting stinky. See, that's where they hit your.
They took your business.
They took it right from me.
Right out from under you. And they would send it out to, again, the one lady who talked about it, she opened it up and there's this foul smell, just awful, terrible smell. And she tried calling them up and they were like, go to the website. So she went to the website, to the complaint website, and there was actually on the drop-down menu, stinky leggings was a listing on there. This is how often this happened, that they added this in as a common complaint. And she wasn't even able to send them back for a refund. She was told they're hers now.
Mm-hmm. Sell them half price as a night shirt or night clothes. Or whatever.
Sell them half price. Oh, you know what she should do? She put them in the freezer because that'll take the stink away. like that'll make them way less stinky, and you'll be able to sell them. Like sell them half price. It was ridiculous because they did not have a refund policy. Their refund policy was there are no refunds.
Sell your product.
It was essentially buyer beware.
Mm-hmm. I imagine that whoever packed these things, like got it from these cages outside, I imagine that some of them probably brought up a complaint like, hey guys, I think there's a problem out here. This one has a hole in it, and this one, like, I can tell there's like condensation inside.
Put it in a box.
Yeah, exactly. I imagine it's like, listen, we're way behind. Just keep going. Like, it doesn't matter. These people are just going to buy it, whatever. I imagine that even from that level up to the consultants, that nobody really cared what happened. They're just, the money's coming in and that's all we care about.
Right. And the one lady was asked, like, did you see anything that had to do, for this? And she's like, yeah, I walk past it every day. They were out in the parking lot. Mm-hmm. She knew that the leggings were getting moldy.
Yeah.
She's like, we were told, we knew. We did it anyway. Mm-hmm. And Mark's response was beautiful. He said, we don't have a stinky leggings problem. We have a social media problem. It was beautiful, beautiful moment, because that's saying, like, we don't actually have a problem. We just have people talking about a problem.
Mm-hmm. If no one knew about the problem, we wouldn't have a problem.
Right. If nobody knew about the problem, we wouldn't be talking about the problem. So we don't have a problem. We have people talking about a problem. So I don't think that's ever worked for anyone in the history of anything.
Mark really could have been a lawyer, and done really well at it, because he could push things off and make it sound so believable to some extent. Like, I think he would have excelled as a lawyer. Like, just things he could come up with.
They were both convincing.
Yeah.
Right? Some of the things he said, it's like if you're failing at this business, it's not because the business is failing you, it's because you're failing the business.
Right.
Wow.
Stop complaining, or what did he say? I don't know if I wrote it down or not. Something about complainers. Something about complainers don't make money, or I gotta see if I can remember it. I thought I wrote it down, but it was something about people make money, but complainers don't. Something like that. You guys remember what he said? I thought
he had a few of those type of like nonsensical lines that.
Oh, here it is.
Transparent.
Losers make excuses and winners make money. So it's like, and that's the kind of stuff, that's the kind of response they would have to, moldy clothes and stinky leggings and all that. Like, all right, if you're just going to complain, then you're a loser, right? But if you're going to be a winner if you make money. So stop complaining. That's how, you're a loser if you do that. And it's just pushing the problem back on them instead of owning it. Which is ironic, because Mark would talk a lot about how he preached and practiced ownership of problems. He would say, that's how I'd handle lawsuits. It's unfortunate that it had to get to that level for me to listen to you. And that's why I would settle things, because whatever.
Like that's what caused the lawsuit, was just the failure to listen, not all the underlying true.
All you need to do is listen a little bit better. Right.
Yeah.
They all sorts of sound bites from both of them. Like they had a lot of really, really great, phenomenal quotes. If you watch the documentary, it's phenomenal. Just listening to them try and sugarcoat and grease over everything that happened. But like the LuLaRoe used a lot of that kind of pop soundbite kind of thing a lot. And the one phrase that was used was pop feminism. Was they used a lot of pop feminism, and that really struck me because I'm like, yeah, a lot of what they were doing, the whole empowerment thing wasn't about empowerment. It was about getting your money. And it was, the whole like hashtag girl boss, like be your own boss. You can do this, but it wasn't ever aimed at people who, people of color. It was almost never aimed at people of color, saying like you can be empowered too. You can stand up with this. It was always aimed at the just below middle class or poor rural white women who wanted to be stay-at-home moms.
Yeah, I think that's one of the keys. Is we talked about it was the full-time income for part-time work. They were trying to appeal to women who wanted to raise their families, attend to things at home, but also produce a full-time income, which you really can't do both. So their whole premise that they were selling was false to begin with. Right. I mean, you're going to make, to some point, you're going to make based on the work you put in, right? In any business, that's kind of how it works. So they didn't have any structure where they could prove that you could make essentially twice the hours you worked. Like if you worked 20 hours, you could make 40 hours pay. There was no proof of that. That was just fantasy. There's no reason to believe that at all. But many MLMs do that. Yeah. They promote that idea that there's some type of multiplier, little gremlin multiplier in the system that you can't see and no one can see. But you put $1 in and $2 come out the other end or something, like, okay, it's the gremlin hard at work inside the box.
But they have enough people within the company who've experienced that, like who find that get those $150,000 checks, making $400,000 a year, that they parade them in front of everyone else and go, see, you could be just like this. You're never going to be just like that.
You didn't get in early.
You didn't get in early enough.
Yep.
You don't have enough influence to be able to move up in the company that way because your market's already saturated. But they were still trying to pull people in. And yeah, they were just pulling in money, vacuuming it up.
25% month-over-month growth.
That's astounding.
I don't even know how you would layer management at that speed. Like, how do you have enough people in there who know what they're doing to keep building a base that large?
They didn't.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, they seem to have an unlimited amount of family members, so they just keep coming.
Saying, "Oh, we need one more family member over here. Take that seat over there." What do I do? You're the director of marketing imagery. Look on Google Images and find a whole bunch of images, and then
change them by 20%.
Change it by 20%, and then we can put them in all of our marketing stuff. This isn't the same as the art department. This is the marketing department. This is all about the brochures that we're going to be making. Make sure you figure out how to remove the water stamps off of the generic images from Shutterfly or whatever.
I just picture them taking like a Picasso painting or something, and like it's already kind of seemingly chaotic to whoever's looking at it, and just like moving objects on there around, like, oh, there's a nose, but now it's on the other side of the painting, and there's a mouth, and now it's on the other side. That's 20%, right? And it doesn't look any different, right? Okay,
like
we'll
a
go
Mr.
with
Potato Head.
Yeah, you just arrange it all day long.
Just take any famous cubist painting, turn it upside down, and change the shade from green to blue.
That's 20%, right?
20%.
Good enough.
And slap it on a pair of leggings as a repeating pattern. It'll be done. See, I could have made a whole bunch of money out of that. Yeah.
You start your own MLM. Bella Grande multi-level marketing.
Well, I was thinking, what if we combine the power of MLM with a cult? Which is our.
Well, I think that's what LuLaRoe did.
we could do it better or worse.
Or worse.
Depending on how you want to look at it.
Well, and and then we've got the prosperity gospel, because you said put in $1, you get $2 back. You've got that message built right into it. Like, get rich quick kind of thing. So like, might as well just say at that point, you know what, we're not going to sell you anything. Just give us money. Maybe you'll make some money. There's not really sure what you're doing over here, but just believe us.
But if you get in on the ground floor, you'll be guaranteed to make a ton of money as more people come in beneath of you.
Exactly. That's all you need. It's like, all right, so I just send them money and then I get more. Oh, perfect. I'm in.
We just got to get up to like 10 layers and we'll have the majority of people. I think the one guy I was talking about, the math works out. Like at 13 layers, that's everybody on the whole planet.
You wipe out the whole planet.
The whole population at 13 layers of this. So if we can get out to like maybe 8 or 9, like we're set for forever.
Mm-hmm. That's the way to go. MLM cult.
Yeah.
There you go.
So at this point, LuLaRoe's on top of the world, and they're getting some pressure. They had the bad items go out, some other problems. So they develop, I can see this is one of those meetings where everybody's trying to rushing to get out. They develop a 100% buyback policy. Right? They're like, oh yeah, no big deal. We'll just buy everything back. $100 million in refunds they issued.
Yeah.
Before they changed the policy.
80% of their distributors out the door. As soon as they were able to. They started getting, but they very quickly walked that back.
Right. $100 million later, they're like, we've lost enough. Well, that's still not a lot of money for them.
Mm-hmm. Right. You got over $1 billion.
And they have that fine product now returned. They forgot about that.
Yeah. They got all this product back. All they need to get more people come in and they'll get more money coming in from that, and they'll be able to put that product back out.
Yeah, I mean, if their warehouse was already to capacity, stuff sitting outside and whatever, you imagine you have $100 million worth of stuff coming back in. You're like, what am I going to do with this now?
Yeah, they probably delivered it right to the landfill. No, I don't know, but you can picture that, right? Like, It's pretty much worthless anyway.
Right.
But especially if it's the stuff with holes in it that stinks and is nasty, like that stuff's all going back.
Well, we didn't even mention that yet. That I don't think, unless I missed it, but the quality went down. We did mention it, but people were saying there was holes in it. Not only the things were wet, but there were holes in it. It wasn't that buttery soft that people had come to expect. Thinner material. It was ripping. It was all kinds of stuff. So it was the quality was taking a hit as they were trying to scale up production way too quickly. And that really turned a lot of people off to it as well. It wasn't this quality product that they had come to expect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so $100 million in refunds, and they reversed the buyback policy. It's not really clear if this was, I think this was supposed to be a permanent policy, but I guess they never said that. So they then, I guess, made it temporary. They changed it, and this led to 50 lawsuits, although the lawsuits were about other things. They're about sales tax being calculated incorrectly, misleading advertising, and unfair business practices. And they settled all 50. As I understand it, all of them are gone. State of Washington sued them. This one was a little more serious for being a pyramid scheme. Flat out, they said it. You're a pyramid scheme. Yeah.
They settled that one.
Yeah, for almost $5 million. Yeah. $4.75 million. And they did make some changes to policies, which tells me they changed the parts that got them in trouble.
Yeah. But they were also sued by one of their by Providence Industries, which was one of their suppliers. Mm-hmm. It was their chief clothing supplier, and they were saying that hey, LuLaRoe is insolvent. They haven't paid their bill. They can't pay their bill. They haven't paid us for the stuff that we've made for them. I think there was a claim that they didn't know where some of they were getting some of their product because it wasn't from them. Because they decided at a certain point, we're not going to provide any more product for you because you haven't paid your bills. And they were saying that they were insolvent and that Mark and DeAnne had created shell companies to move their profits and move their money into, to hide it so that they could continue to fund their lavish lifestyle, which would also serve to hinder, delay, and defraud their creditors.
Yeah, we see a tremendous number of accusations. You think every big company gets sued. It's just part of doing business, right? I mean, it's just part of the system. But to get 50 lawsuits at one time and get sued by the state of Washington for a pyramid scheme, that's, again, serious. Mm-hmm. And, to be able to settle the most serious one for under $5 million, they probably got out of the whole thing. I don't know the number, but for a fraction of what they had. Like, you have $1 billion revenue year, $1.3 billion. That that absolves a lot of sin when it comes to lawsuits.
Yeah.
You can just fund those attorneys, keep filing motions, kind of press the people to settle to get it over with. Yeah, I mean, they pulled out of the entire situation.
Yeah. And some of I think that it was really fun to watch some of the footage of the depositions.
Yeah.
For some of the people, for the Washington case. It's like they asked DeAnne, it's like, are you the president? She's like, they tell me I am.
Like, just totally, I have no idea anything about this company.
Totally, like, I have no idea what's going on with this company. Like, I'm making all the decisions, but I don't know anything. But the one, I think, was one of her sons who was one of the heads of creative or whatever.
On the Zoom or whatever.
Yeah, like he was said, like, every time they asked him a question, it was, I do not recall. Like, I asked him his name. It was like, is your name this? I do not recall. Like, he just took the hard line. Like, I do not recall to every single question.
Well, who's the guy on the Zoom that said, we have to watch out for the word, or we don't want to be a pyramid scheme?
That was one of the other kids.
We have to work.
It's like, we've got to change these policies because we want to get away from the pyramid scheme.
Yeah, right. It was that same guy. I think it was the same guy that kept saying,
It might be. I don't remember.
recall or whatever. But it was the best, though, when they would flash back to other things that they said, maybe even a year prior, that totally contradicted themselves.
Did you say this? I do not recall. Like, video of him saying this.
that. They did that with Mark and DeAnne as well. Like,
is DeAnne your mom? I do not recall.
Never heard of her.
Don't recall. Don't know anything. Because he took the hard line on do not recall during those depositions. But they were saying stuff like we've got to there's people saying we're a pyramid scheme out there, so we've got to change some of our policies so that we're not a pyramid scheme anymore, or something to that almost verbatim to that effect, and then they were like, "Well, are you a pyramid scheme?" He's like, "No." And Mark was like, "I don't know what he was saying with that, but he didn't actually say that we were a pyramid scheme. He was saying we have the appearance of one from the outside if you don't look too close, but we want to change that so we don't look that way anymore." I'm like, the only reason you don't want to look like a pyramid scheme is because you're a pyramid scheme.
It certainly seemed like they were very focused on recruiting and not direct sales. Mm-hmm. So it's tough, but again, they settled it, so it's done, and they moved on.
I think one of the most telling things, at least from what we saw in the documentary, was there was a chart that was shown by the lawyer that I think maybe the main lawyer that took the case, and it was a chart showing something like the amount of income for the bonus checks versus the amount of income for the direct sales. And the direct sales was like in the negative, and then the bonus income was, it was
bonus checks were
way
bonus
up there.
Checks was something like 15 or 15 or 16 million dollars.
Yeah, like,
and then direct sales just it was like a negative $1 million. Or something like
and
that.
so it really made their case for them, because as far as I can tell, and I'm no lawyer or anything, but as far as I can tell, the law is such that a certain percentage of the income has to come from direct sales. And I think that there must be a way to return the items as well. And that what kind of differentiates a multi-level marketing company from a pyramid scheme. And from what it seems like, LuLaRoe was doing all of it wrong. They were doing it the opposite of, so hence the policy change to return policy and less of an emphasis on upline and downline and recruiting people and more emphasis on actually selling. So it made sense that they would have to switch things.
Hence it being a pyramid scheme.
Right.
Yeah, I think they lowered. I thought it said in the documentary that they lowered their fee significantly.
Yeah,
as part of that. So it's not
by
5,000.
90%.
They lowered it by 90%.
Yeah,
the initial buy-in.
so it's like 500 or so.
Which, if you had to pay like around $10,000 to begin with, I'd be furious. Like, I had to pay $10,000, and now I can pay $500 or whatever it is.
You probably get less fabulous buttery soft product
true.
for that.
Yeah.
Less water in the product, maybe.
There, probably less water in the product, which just should infuriate you.
It does, because maybe I still have a chance.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe.
Time to be done with counseling.
I think they're. I think they also were kind of going more with a sales matter towards bonus checks, like your distributors, and now it's less of a we're selling directly to the distributors who then sell to the public, and more it's 90% reduction because we still own the product. You're just the representative. You sell the product. If you sell the product, you make more money.
Yeah, like a just-in-time.
Yeah.
Rather than having them buy and hold, which also doesn't make sense. Like a person in a regular house is going to store $5,000, $10,000 worth of stuff. Like
some of them were storing. Like they were told that they should be keeping $20,000 worth of product in their line so that they could sell it at any given time. But that was some of the unrealistic things I expected from people. And the higher up you were, the more unrealistic the expectations were. Like DeAnne wanting everyone to be, rail skinny.
Yeah, let's talk about image in this, because this became. We saw the thing with Mark and the cars. He had like some supercar.
Mm-hmm. That's right. It was
with a K.
The Koenigseggs.
Right. Koenigsegg, right?
Yeah, the Koenigseggs.
Right. He was part of a group.
The Ghost Group or something.
That,
Ghost Crew or
they were
something.
all about the Koenigseggs or something. Yeah, which I mean, they're multi-million-dollar cars as far as I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. Over hundreds of millions of dollars.
Hundreds of millions.
For some of those Koenigseggs, yeah.
I bet they're mechanical disasters, though. I think they had one of those on Top Gear.
They did.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it turned out well.
It actually did. It turned out to be one of the fastest cars they've ever had around.
In terms of like the reliability, they're all fast. I mean, all the cars on Top Gear are fast, but it's certainly quick. But I think that some of those kind of like boutique supercar manufacturers, like Bugatti, I'm not sure the reliability is really there.
Bugatti's been around a long time.
Yeah. I think speed, though, is like you can't have it all, right? You're going to emphasize one thing. But they picked kind of this unusual brand of very distinct.
And they would drive them around, I guess, and not super fast, but they would always be going over the speed limit. But they loved that like that. But that was part of their image. That was part of Mark's image was the fast car.
It doesn't seem to fit with the whole
super expensive
lagging thing. I don't get the connection to. I don't know. Yeah, so that was what he did. But then what you see from the other side is the Tijuana skinnies.
Yeah.
Right? This pressure to travel to Tijuana, Mexico, which is very close to the border, close to California, and have weight loss surgery.
Yeah, I think it was the gastric sleeve surgery. And she would set people up. She would have her sister drive them down to Tijuana to have the thing done, and then they could fly back after the procedure was done. And she kept pushing people to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I remember the one woman had not that same surgery, but she had a balloon. I wasn't quite sure what that
she had the
entailed.
gastric balloon.
So she had that done, and it had terrible repercussions for it, and had to get it, I guess, removed or something. She had to have something changed. And she was like, I can't believe that I went that far, and I can't believe that they kind of allowed me. I can't believe I allowed them to kind of speak into my life that enough to do that. And the way that they were talking about that whole thing, kind of gave me a sense that it was kind of like just another pyramid scheme to buy into. So like, my sister will drive you down there and you fly back. Like, here, let me have more people buy into this. And it made me wonder if DeAnne was maybe getting a cut from every time, something like that.
I kind of suspect that she was.
Because they were just way too close to all of this.
Because her response to this woman's issue with a major surgery that went wrong was, you should have gone down to Tijuana.
Yeah, right.
Shouldn't have done that one. Should have done the sleeve down in Tijuana. Should have done what I said. I can still hook you up with that. And she's like, no.
Yeah,
No.
I think image was a big part of it. I think that the brand, like she wanted to look a certain way for the brand, and it kind of goes along with success, like attractiveness, which is what I think they were trying to achieve. I find it interesting because Marshall Applewhite, one of my favorite cult leaders, he and his group traveled down to Tijuana, I believe it was, for castration surgery.
Isn't that an interesting phrase to use? One of my favorite cult leaders.
Yeah. Well, he's got the eyes, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like, I watched. I think pretty much everything was available on him. Like the videos he did, such a strange mannerism, and a very small cult. I mean, this was like just a room full of people. It wasn't like an auditorium. It was a house where they ran a computer business. and I think it was Southern California. And he just was so aloof and awkward, and yet they were just gobbling it up. Like he had them mesmerized. It's hard to believe they weren't running out there screaming. What's that?
The leader. I love the leader. Of course, Simpsons reference.
Yeah.
Simpsons reference.
Of course, in the cult, the Heaven's Gate, things didn't work out too well.
No.
For them. But
No.
We'll have to do that one sometime.
Yeah, that one is just the backstory. Like there's a whole, like it's an incredible story. It's more than just a picture of that guy like standing, like, whew, and that's pretty weird. It's more than that. And I think we talked about this before. The website's actually still up.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It still looks like from the 1980s.
Back to DeAnne seemed really, really hung up on image for the company, and which really struck me as odd, because a lot of the allure of LuLaRoe at first was the fact that it was aimed at people with realistic body types. That it wasn't just aimed at people who were super skinny. Mm-hmm. It was aimed at people who had who were a bit on the larger side. And that's what people liked about it, was they could have things that looked really nice and fit them really well and were buttery soft, but that gave them a sense of comfort. Mm-hmm. And then once she started becoming more successful, it was image is everything. But then they had the other issues with image and stuff, like in January 2018 with the National Down Syndrome Society. I don't know if you heard about this part of it. One of the top distributors mocked people with mental disabilities during a live stream sale.
Did they cover this in the?
I don't think they did. This was another thing that I found, but they mocked. She mocked somebody, or she mocked people with mental disabilities on the live stream, and the National Down Syndrome Society requested LuLaRoe sever ties with that distributor. They were like, "You need to sever ties with it," and DeAnne was just like, "No." They declined because the distributor apologized to LuLaRoe.
Right, not to the...
Didn't apologize to the NDSS, didn't apologize to people with mental disabilities in general, just apologized to LuLaRoe, and LuLaRoe accepted the apology, so they're not going to sever ties with her, which is honestly an image problem.
Yeah, or a social media problem, as Mark would say.
Yeah, no, it's not a... That's not a making fun of mentally disabled people problem. It's a social media problem. Like, no, I think that's a making fun of people problem. Like this.
There's a YouTube channel called LuLaRoe Fail, and they don't have a lot of videos, but they are all well worth viewing. You know, if anybody out there it's one you might want to check out.
Some of the patterns some of the funny patterns.
Oh yeah.
Well, and it's I don't. There may be some about the patterns, but specifically it's the people that we're involved with. There's a lot of people that probably a lot of videos we saw in the documentary. But like I see one here, to your point, Mike, LuLaRoe person, I won't use her name, a certain person's brother using the R word in 2018. So maybe that's, close at very least to what you're talking about. And it's just these terrible examples of people, and what they were really about, I guess, but just everything they would do for LuLaRoe and how much they were about it. Yeah, it's well worth looking at them.
And the control, again, this is the cult aspect of the control they had over most of their downline from the top down was with their social media was insanely high. Mm-hmm. Like they were monitoring everybody's social media posts, and if they started saying something negative again about LuLaRoe, like making a complaint, they were like told to shut it down.
Or found themselves maybe removed from...
Yeah.
Didn't they remove some distributors?
They did. And then it was funny because right around the time these lawsuits started getting up there, there was a group on Facebook that was created to be like LuLaRoe Complaint Department or something like that. It was where everybody would come, and it blew up. It became viral like really quick because there were so many people complaining about LuLaRoe, from distributors to people who had bought product and weren't satisfied with it, all the way up to some of the mentors starting to complain about things. Mm-hmm. And one of the women who had been mentor, I think it was the same one who had the the gastric surgery, she started looking around when she realized that her marriage was over because of LuLaRoe and that they were taking back her house and repossessing his stuff. She started looking around for a class action attorney. She started asking around. It could have been me.
Could have been you, Mike.
If only I hadn't fallen asleep
You
during
could
those
have taken on
exams.
LuLaRoe.
Could have. I'd had to move to California, but could have been. Instead of my counselor. It's rough.
Tough break.
It's hard to see that fail, right? Like just
Such a step down.
in 3D.
Totally is. Anyway, LuLaRoe had a lot of fails.
Yeah, but amazingly, right? And I think this is important to remember. Mark and it was DeAnne, right? DeAnne.
Yeah.
They're both exceedingly wealthy. They survived a massive quantity of lawsuits, seemingly unscathed. For the kind of money they have, they didn't really pay anything.
Yeah.
And they're still in business and apparently doing okay. Like there's something about being ultra rich that shields you from consequences.
Yeah,
and I think they're proof that you can do just about everything wrong. And as long as you have money, it still works out. As long as you can still afford attorneys, which they can, they were able to defend themselves and settle everything.
One thing I think they got out of all of this is that they have much better responses to controversy. So now they're like just saying all the right words that they learned from their attorneys to get out of, to not accept consequences, right? To not accept their responsibility in what they did. So now they'll say stuff like, oh, we don't have a product problem or whatever they said. We have a social media problem, and just ultra deflecting, and that's based on the webinars and everything they would do when LuLaRoe was big. The responses then weren't real good. They were very just attacking people and whatever. But now you see them in this documentary and they're like, no, this is fine. We didn't have that problem. It was just a social media problem. And just, they were like the epitome of deflecting responsibility.
They were more polished, I guess, compared to where they were.
Yeah.
But still, if that's the best they can present, I kind of feel like the producer of the documentary handed them a shovel and they're like, you know what, we have our own backhoe. And just straight in the ground.
It's made of gold. We've perfected it.
It's like, we've got this thing. We're bringing it in. You can keep your shovels. It's fine.
We'll do it much
we got a bigger
faster.
hole. You know what? Our hole's going to grow at 25% per year.
Month over month.
For every word we say, it's going to grow at
It's gonna
25%.
In 2017, the Better Business Bureau gave them a rating of F based on the number of complaints they had, the product testing that was done, and the number of lawsuits. And it has not come back up from F since then.
Oh.
It is currently October 2021. They still have an F rating for the Better Business Bureau because they still have not addressed all of those things.
Yeah. I think they've addressed enough to size up legal problems. But I'm not sure their distributors are happy. I don't know if there's 18,000 still out there though, right?
There was one in the documentary who said, "I'm going to be with LuLaRoe as long as I can," and she said, until I die or until they go out of business. And I don't know. Like when I heard that, I was like, okay, so people are still buying into this. Still drinking the Kool-Aid, if you want to say it like that.
That's some loyalty right there.
Yeah, like what do you know about all this, right? Like you know what happened, right? So yeah, there's still people that really believe in it, and maybe there are people who genuinely just like the clothes, right? And that's all that they are doing this for, or something. Mm-hmm. And maybe they have friends that really just like the clothes. Maybe they have people that just generally buy from them. But I guess there's probably still people that just buy into the whole culture of it.
Mm-hmm. And maybe just like the MLM philosophy, which always struck me as kind of odd, right? Like, imagine if you were walking through like a grocery store. I like bananas. If I walked by and saw a bunch of bananas and I grabbed it, I'm like, I think these are good bananas. And some guy popped out of the stand. You like bananas? Well, I got a deal for you.
You like bananas?
You can
like
market
money?
these to all. Yeah, you like money? You can market these to all your friends. You can be the king of bananas.
Oh, and these bananas over here, everybody loves these bananas. These bananas are the best, but we only have a limited number of these bananas, and everybody's going to want them because we didn't talk about the unicorns.
Right.
Oh yeah.
unicorns.
We mentioned how the patterns were so unique. They only did like 5,000 of them. Some of those patterns were really ugly.
I would say almost all. Yeah.
Some of those patterns were really unfortunate in the placement of certain objects in them. But some of those patterns, people just went wild for. They really wanted them. But since there's only 5,000 of them, they were super rare, being shipped all over the country. So if you got one of those patterns, that was money right there. And that's what internally they called the unicorn patterns. Like those certain patterns that people just craved and had to have. I honestly think that that's not actually a bad part of a business model, to give that kind of uniqueness to every line that gives that much of a demand to those specific products. Which, let's be honest, leggings are leggings.
Yeah, differentiating them is pretty hard.
Differentiating them based on the pattern and then only have a limiting pattern, that's money right there. That's a good portion of a good product thing. It's a good idea. But the way LuLaRoe went about building their money was get rich quick. Just vacuum up all the money from the low end instead of doing the hard work of building a really successful and quality business.
Yeah, based on rarity.
Based on the rarity. Because I think they still could have made a ton of money with those rare patterns, price point slightly higher, with the similar exclusivity, but not preying on their own customers. And that was the biggest problem with LuLaRoe. And I think they could still pivot if they got somebody in a higher up position who knew what they were doing. They could pivot to more online sales through Amazon. I'm not sure if they're doing that at all at this point, but they could pivot to more online sales and direct sales to customers through that way. And instead of, we have to have our distributors selling in person or online, cut some of that back. Keep that exclusivity. Keep those really good salespeople. Make them salary.
Yeah, make them salary or make them like true business partners and not this wholesale or retailer where they're buying, just get rid of a whole MLM piece.
Take the MLM out and go back to making a quality product. And you could still make some money.
So, Mike, you were talking about these unicorn things. It made me wonder how much people are spending on these unicorn prints, on these rare ones, right? And so I was like, all right, let me check eBay. So I checked eBay, the completed listings, and I put the filter highest price first. Now, this is October 2021. I would be really curious what they were selling for, at their height, like in, like 2016, 2017, something like that. But the highest one that actually sold, there were some offers. So this is just for one garment, all right? So this is for a dress. It was listed for $200, but it was a best offer accepted, so it was less than that. But still, for one thing, okay? And be hard-pressed to find anything else that actually sold just one item. There was like a cheetah print thing here that I see, and people just put unicorn in the description, so it's like they're really like trying to push it home. But for the vast majority of them, they don't actually sell. Well, actually, that's not true. Now that I'm looking down here, for certain ones, once you get up past, it's right around $100. People will buy single items for about $100, $120. There's one I saw, and again, these are pretty ugly to me. All right, but they're unique. I'll give them that. So you're right around $100. You put unicorn in the title, and you might just sell it. Now, the worst one that I see here is they're used, all right? So they're pre-owned. And the picture is someone in their car.
Technically, they're all pre-owned.
That's true. So there's someone sitting in the car because you can see bottom of the steering wheel, and they're wearing these leggings, okay? And they take a picture of it and list it up for $250. Now, nobody bought it at this point. It just ended today, actually, but I guess that's all it takes is just wear them, take a picture of them while you're sitting in your car, steering wheel. Oh, well, that's fine.
I will say, to be fair, in some of the live streams, the fashion consultants were actually modeling the clothing. They were putting them on wearing them and showing what they look like while wearing them. So that's not as big a thing, but it is funny to hear like they're sitting in their car doing it. Like this isn't a picture of them like, okay, I'm modeling this in front of a mirror or like selfie just to see what you can see. It was like I'm sitting in my car.
Last minute thought. All right, cool. This is all right.
These are LuLaRoe. They're a unicorn pattern. eBay.
Now, are they just modeling and they have other ones in stock, or are you getting those exact ones that they're wearing?
I assume it's the exact one.
Probably those exact ones.
I assume it's the exact one. So anybody at home, that has $250 sitting around, they could be yours. You may not be able to see all of them. You can just see certain part of it.
And to be honest, some people and I've done it. Like put it in a washing machine, wash it. It's gonna be fine.
Sure.
Unless it falls apart because it's LuLaRoe. Depending on what era, of that 3-year period from 2014 to 2017, they could have been good quality, like really good quality. I'm sure some of them really are now, but then the quality dropped off and whew.
It's interesting that the whole unicorn thing took off with that type of product. I think of clothing I know some clothing is permanent, but most of it wears out, right? Like, especially, not maybe like a purse or something, but a shirt or pants, socks. Like, you wouldn't be like, oh, those socks, I'll have them forever. I hope not, right? That wouldn't be good. So I don't think of those anyways long term. So if there's a special pattern, they put it in like a glass box or whatever. Like, I'm never going to wear this. Like, what?
Maybe some people have, because if you're spending $150 on it, are you planning on wearing it? Is it that important? But they probably are now that I say that.
Yeah, some people, some people will drop like a couple of $1,000 on an outfit they're going to wear once.
Yeah,
I don't understand that. If I spend that much money on something, I want to use it repeatedly. And as for socks, I love my socks. I have been wearing patterned socks of various types for years. I love the different patterns. Probably people can't see them right now. I have the T-Rex skeletons on my socks right now. I love those different types of socks. But to your point, I don't expect these to last forever. I might have to get another pair of T-Rex socks at some point.
Not really collectibles, I guess, is what I'm getting at, right? Like some things, like wasn't there was a Hummel figurines that they have the whole exclusivity thing down to a science where like there's certain ones that are very valuable, but they're not consumable.
Mm-hmm. No, you put those on a mantelpiece somewhere, and as long as kids don't hit it with a baseball, it's going to be there forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but pants or leggings, whatever, like really, I don't know. I guess. I mean, maybe I could see paying like a little bit more, like a couple pennies more. I really can't see buying these at all, if I'm to be honest. Like I'm stuck in that these are even something that people want.
Like I think that when DeAnne started out, she was expecting, okay, Kmart prices for like JCPenney product.
That's a good comparison.
And then as she grew, it became like Gucci product for JCPenney prices. When in reality, it's Kmart Gucci. Like it's not even that it became not even that great. And ultimately, almost a joke. And we're sitting here laughing at it because it just became that ridiculous. But their company is still making money.
And somehow they came out better than Kmart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right? I still love Kmart.
Overhead's really, I guess that's the advantage of MLM, right? You have the social media, you have to have a corporate office, you have to have a distribution center. But that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
You don't need to rent retail stores all across the country and face competition from Amazon or Amazon, as they say in Britain. Is that how you pronounce it on Top Gear? Amazon.
Amazon.
Which is great. That's how I pronounce it like half the time anymore.
Right.
Aluminium and Amazon.
Amazon.
It's so much better than how we say it. And I think like instead of Nissan, it's Nissan. A Nissan 370Z, Nissan GTR.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, MLM, like I look at it like there's no way that's worth it, but to them, I guess it saved them a lot of money, and you're still able to make a lot of money. Yeah, but to think they compete with Walmart, they compete with Amazon, they compete with Kmart's still around?
I don't think so.
They go on?
I think it might be a website. I think it might be like online only, but the only Kmart's I knew that were around this area are sadly closed.
What about JCPenney? You mentioned that.
JCPenney over at the mall.
They're still around?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Kirkwood Highway, I think, too.
Yeah, I believe
Price's
there's
Corner.
one,
Yeah.
It's tough for brick and mortar places.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I think the pivot might be the idea, right? We talked about they could go from being an MLM to just a traditional online company.
Yeah.
And not have to deal with the risk and the bad press anymore.
Yeah, to quote Ross, pivot! They would just pivot. They probably would make way more money than they're making now and be able to bring their name back.
Mm-hmm.
But as it is right now, the name is almost mud. They went from 80,000 distributors to 18,000 distributors. Like that's...
Yeah, and the $100 million in refunds, I think, really speaks to people's commitment.
They call it the Exodus. Just another religious term. Mm-hmm. A mass exodus. Everybody's leaving. They didn't have faith in the company.
So there are 2 Kmart stores within 100 plus miles of us, both in New Jersey. Wall, New Jersey, and Avenel, New Jersey. So actually these are up closer to New York City. So definitely none near us. You have to go like 2-ish hours away to get to one. So if you're a diehard Kmart fan, that's the place to be.
I don't think I'm that diehard Kmart fan. I used to love it when I was a kid, but
Loved a lot of things when you were a kid that you realize were like, that was stupid.
just don't hold up.
There was a store, Woolworth, that was they a competitor? Were they owned by the same company? I don't know, but they were popular, Woolworth, for a long time. I don't know if they're still around, but retailers have it tough. It's a tough business.
It is. It is a tough business. That's why I'm glad I got out of it.
All right, so so that's MLMs. That's LuLaRoe. Interesting journey they made. We'll see what they do in the future. I think it's serves as there's a lesson in terms of people kind of wanting quick money. It doesn't really work that way without an idea, right? So I mean, I think quick money is possible if you come up with some incredible idea. But like we talked about before, it seems like they're all taken anymore. It's not, I mean, maybe big tech, they can come up with new ideas and other large companies like pharmaceutical companies. But it's hard without a lot of money to advance an idea into the levels that you need to do to be competitive or to launch some huge business.
Yeah.
So if you're just kind of latching on to another company's idea, then you have to work hard. Like, I don't think there is any magic business where you can make 3 or 4 times as much as you would somewhere else for the same work.
That reminds me of a movie, The Hudsucker Proxy. That's a good movie. It's just like the main character's like just drew a circle for kids. Like that was his whole idea. It was kind of like it was the hula hoop, which honestly did take off. Like it blew up in the 60s, like just majorly. But it was definitely that idea. It was like the get rich quick scheme isn't going to work unless you get certain backing. It was a very dark comedy, but it was really funny. But yeah.
Yeah. The path to financial success for many people is hard work and application of critical reasoning skills. And I think this is what happened at LuLaRoe, not finding something special, being something special, right? I think makes much more of a difference, like working on yourself, education, trying to maintain a productive schedule. It's not a matter of, I just haven't found the people that are going to hand me a wheelbarrow of cash. That's just not how it works.
If only it weren't for those people. They haven't come around with a wheelbarrow full of cash to make my dreams come true.
Right.
Woe is me, how I'm going to ever do this.
Yeah, and I think maybe for some of the people who got involved with LuLaRoe, their pre-existing attitude toward finance, maybe it was part of the problem. Like the lottery winner curse, which I've talked about, actually isn't real, but there are a substantial portion of lottery winners that end up bankrupt. It's not 70%. That was a false statistic, but it's quite a few, surprisingly large. And I think that maybe the mentality, of like, I'll take this 1 in a billion chance to win some money and I'll spend money that I'm never going to get back. Maybe that mentality is consistent with, if you do get money, not holding on to it.
Right.
And I wonder if that's not what happened the LuLaRoe. I'm going to put $5,000 in. It's like an expensive lottery ticket.
Yeah.
But the same payoff.
Because if I put $5,000 in, I'll make $150,000 this year. That's what LuLaRoe is selling to you. It's the idea that, hey, if you put this $5,000 in and work part-time and spend time with your kids, you can make $150,000 this year. But that was never going to happen.
Yeah, very intriguing tagline.
There'll always be a percent of the population that will be attracted to MLMs for the large promise of cash.
Yeah.
Maybe not even for the recruiting or the product, but just the idea that they can now have access to all this money. And I think MLMs know it. Because again, their language is all about, believing and believing in yourself, believing in us, and never about the details, never about actual strategies. It's never their secret sauce. They never give that away because they don't have one.
No, they don't have a secret sauce.
The secret sauce is tricking people into becoming, joining. I would like to see MLMs completely banned. I don't really see them as necessary for any legitimate company. If you're legitimate, you can hire employees to do what the distributors would do.
Yeah, I agree.
Or enter into actual business partnerships, and not this whole kind of like, oh, you recruit this guy and he recruits that. What? Like it's almost like kindergarten level reasoning in an adult world.
Yeah.
It's very immature and inappropriate, but yet they're everywhere.
It really creates people. I think it creates people to be a certain way. Almost like how when you meet someone who's a salesperson, car salesperson or whatever, to an extent you can kind of tell. Like they have a certain language, that they know how to get right at what you need or what they think you need or whatever. And it creates that in somebody, that they develop a language and they are always on the lookout for a sale, always on the lookout for how am I going to close this deal or get this thing going or draw more people into what I'm doing. And it just makes for a life that, from my perspective, doesn't really seem that enjoyable. It just seems like your whole life, therefore, is focused on selling, focused on, let me grow my business by whatever means possible. And at what expense, it doesn't matter. As long as money's coming in, as long as I'm accomplishing, as long as I'm doing what this family wants me to do.
See, to that point, I think if you're good at sales, then build a business based on selling something where you're actually kind of respected and have a solid supply chain or multiple suppliers. You're not dependent on one company, and be a salesperson.
Yeah.
I mean, you can make good money as a salesperson if that's your craft, that's your skill. But MLMs, I think, actually disincentivize people from using that skill.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, Jeff, you mentioned like the idea of like growing my business. The problem in the MLM is you're not growing your business.
Right.
You're growing their business.
Right. They're giving you the illusion
Yeah,
that
they're
it's
giving
your
you.
business.
Yeah, they're giving you the illusion that it's your business, but it's not. It's their business.
They can terminate your contract.
Yeah, absolutely.
So again, multiple relationships, and there are some people I've met people, I guess, who are part of like 5-6 different MLMs. But that's not what I mean. It's just like that's digging in worse.
There, you mentioned like some of the like partner, like offering partnerships and things. Like there was issues with that in the early '90s with the tech bubble. Like so many startups were starting up, and then you're just offering ownership property to all of the employees. Like you're a startup, you're getting ownership property, and like anytime it was like, oh, we're meeting goals. Here's some more stocks.
The Simpsons did a great.
They did.
One of the best I've ever seen.
One of the greatest ones. That was Angry Dad. They're doing Angry Dad. The internet startup.
The toilet paper was
right. The toilet paper roll of just stocks. It was just like, here, you want some stocks? Like just giving it out. But that was a problem. At
least it's legal.
Yeah, it was legal. But at the end of the day, when the company folded, your stocks were worth less than the toilet paper that it was printed on.
Again, I've talked about it before. The people that write for The Simpsons, they think through every joke. Like it's not just, oh yeah, put that in there. They think it through. And that was like, I couldn't stop laughing when I saw the toilet paper. Oh, yeah, just take it. It's stock.
And Bart was like, I'm just going to go in the bathroom and get a whole bunch of stocks.
Yeah, and that
So
whole
great.
episode was good. Angry Dad. That was
The Angry Dad was such a good episode. That was so great.
yeah. So
Not Angry Dad the movie, which came later.
right, yeah, the Simpsons episode. So we'll get to the comments. We'll move to the comments, but before we do, any final thoughts about LuLaRoe and MLMs? Let's start with you, Jeff.
Yeah, it just it amazes me how people can just get sucked into it and get to the point of they're defending it so much. Like, this isn't a pyramid scheme. Like, I'm actually making a living off of this, and it just so happens that I sell things, and it just so happens that I recruit people to sell underneath me, and it just so happens that I have to fit into this culture of whatever it is that I'm selling, and they just keep defending it, right? They buy more into it, literally and figuratively, and they have to just keep defending it to other people, because there's inevitably just this. And they often talk about it. There's inevitably this group of people that are the naysayers, right? They're like, you sure this is a good idea? Like, it seems kind of like you've changed a bit, and you're kind of changing to sell this, right? You're changing to fit into this culture that you've kind of bought into. And that's where the defense comes in. They become this defensive kind of language of, oh, no, this stuff's perfect, and it'll change your life, and the best thing that's ever happened to me. And when it boils down to it, it's like, well, you're just feeding more into it. You're just buying more into this stuff. And it's a shame. It's a shame to see that from the outside. Recognize that they just want to make some money. And, most likely within a year, 2 years, maybe, probably less than that, they'll have forgotten about it. Or like it'll just be, all right, I tried that and I was all in and I was doing hosting all these parties and events and whatever else. Webinars and live things and disguising it as other things. Like, hey, I'm going to have this wellness seminar and, asterisk, here's an opportunity to learn about my wellness system that this is how I've aged so well or whatever. It's a shame to see that from the outside and realize you're trying so hard for something that's not going to really get you anywhere. And I was just looking up other MLMs. Like, I was curious how many there are, for one thing. I don't really know the answer to that, but there's this list of 100 of them so it's 100 top 100 global network marketing companies in 2021. And so they have Amway is number one, 8.8 billion. They say turnover. So I don't know if that's revenue or what they mean by that, but $8.8 billion. So I don't know. Amway, Avon, Herbalife, etc. Go on from there. But there are so many companies doing this. So many people that have bought into these things. So many people that have given so much just to be a part of these companies, to sell for a company. And I don't know. I don't know if it'll ever change. To your point, Dr. Grande, do they need to be there? I don't really know that it adds anything. And it just seems to develop a culture and a personality in somebody that doesn't ultimately do them any good, or the people around them, for that matter.
Very good, very good. Yeah, I think that I don't think they're necessary, and I kind of feel like what happened. So years ago, selling was straightforward, right? Telemarketing, door to door, right? People just basically were aggressive and would interfere with your private life to sell you things. All those methods have been shut down, or mostly. You have neighborhoods that don't allow solicitors. You have, either they do, like, as a rule, or functionally they do because no one answers the door. Right. You have better technology to screen telemarketers. Like a big one they still try to get through is the car warranty thing. Oh. I don't know how they keep finding my number.
My car's extended warranty.
It's like 1,000 different numbers they have. Like, how many warranties do I have? I don't have one warranty on a car.
I got a call today, and I love how I don't really love it, I'm being sarcastic, but I love how they find ways to make it seem like this is somebody maybe you know. So find some way to take the area code of your phone number and like just make it seem like it's somebody that probably lives near you. So area code on my phone number is 610, right? So I had a call today. It was 610-610-6110. I'm like, how did you do that? Like, that's incredible. How did you I was impressed. Now, I was a telemarketer and I didn't, but I was really impressed by that. And so now I know, I mean, I've known it for a while, but now I just, if it starts with a 610 and it's not in my phone already, like 99.9% sure that it's not anybody I want to talk to. No, but they are so creative. It's incredible.
Yeah.
We'd like to talk to you about your car's extended warranty.
Well, so that's kind of my point, is that those avenues were shut down for direct sales for companies. So they had to do things like buy ads in the newspaper, then television, then social media, and all the other things have come available. But another way was the idea of this network marketing. So we can't aggravate you by knocking on your door or calling you anymore, but we can get your friends to aggravate you through personal channels where you will answer the phone and you will, acknowledge, their sales pitch. So it's another way to deliver an annoying ad, basically. And just like telemarketing and door-to-door, it needs to go away forever.
Someday they'll be beaming those ads right into our dreams. Futurama. That's a great show.
Another, really well
Really
written.
great show. The writers of Futurama were called at one point the most highly educated, underpaid comedy writing staff in Hollywood history, because there were a bunch of them who had PhDs and they were writing jokes.
Yeah.
And it was hilarious jokes.
Which was a good use of their degree, because that show was hysterical.
It was absolutely hysterical.
Yeah, very underrated. Very
Every
underrated.
episode is hysterical.
Yeah, I would argue pretty much as good as The Simpsons.
Yeah.
In its own way. I mean, the humor was certainly on point.
It was Matt Groening was the brain behind both of those.
Yeah. There's another one, Disenchantment, which is a limited series. Actually pretty funny.
Yeah.
Pretty funny.
Is that an animated series?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's on
Netflix.
Netflix, yeah.
On Netflix, yeah.
Yeah. It seems pretty good. I mean, it's not quite as funny as The Simpsons, but it's novel because it's like medieval castles and stuff, things like that. All right, final thoughts, Mike?
So I first started watching the LuLaRoe on Amazon, and of course the first 5 minutes always gives you that this is the roller coaster you're in for kind of thing. I was like, okay, it seems a little shady, but the first episode, the way it goes, building thing, I was like, it's nothing wrong with that. Doesn't seem to be much that going wrong. And then the second episode was like, oh, I'm seeing there's going to be some problems because of this stuff. This is the time when this is starting to go down. And then you get to the third episode and it's like, right, now we're getting ready to go down the roller coaster and just woo on a loop. But it's like the people running this company, the family, just they had no idea what they were doing. There's nobody there with any kind of business degree. Mm-mm. Trying to direct them at all. And for crying out loud, they were using Google Docs for all of their accounting stuff. And one guy in there is talking about how he's deleting one line to move it to another place. Somebody else is trying to delete another line and move it to this other place all at the same time. And they get all sorts of things confused. And Mark sat there and goes, we've spent millions and millions and millions of dollars to create, to get these database programs and set up and training people to use them and implement it. And then, by the time we get that done, they're obsolete. I'm like, it's a database program. How is it obsolete?
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing when he said that. There's no way that's true.
There is no way that program is obsolete unless you're just evaluating it from, it's not the newest and greatest version anymore. There's another company came out with a newer version. Why are we using this old piece of junk version? But it still would be functional. You still take the investment in that and grow it. And then when you've got the money, you buy a newer version, because there's always going to be a newer version. Somebody's going to have a newer version.
The only thing I thought of with that was maybe as they were scaling, whatever software they were using worked for them at this level, right? However many people they employed worked for them then. And then, they trained everybody, they got used to this, and then they were at this level and it didn't work for them anymore. But it sounded at that point like it was just an excuse. which of course we know Mark is all against excuses.
It definitely seemed to be basically an excuse because otherwise, why did they get so used to using Google Docs?
Yeah.
Like they're using Google Docs for this. If they've been trained in using this other database program, like why are they still using the Google Docs? It's because they didn't actually want to implement any of these things. Because those kind of database tracking softwares would make it easy to track what was going on. And they didn't want it to be easy to track because then legal issues could come up. But it was such a roller coaster reviewing other sources that I found. It was just like, this is such a fast-paced thing too. Like it was just like 2016 to 2017 was when almost all of this stuff happened. Because after that, it was all in litigation. It was kind of on the down low. Like the exodus happened in late 2017, and after that, it was just kind of like LuLaRoe is down here now. They're still making money. They're still operating.
They're still wealthy.
They're still wealthy. The MLM thing. They're going to be wealthy because they have all of these shell companies holding on to all this massive amount of wealth.
And their supercars.
Yeah, and their supercars and everything. But the whole thing, like, it was really funny to me because I was watching that, and then the next night I was watching a show called What We Do in the Shadows, which is about vampires in modern day. It is hysterical. It's on Hulu and FX. The original movie was written and directed by Taika Waititi out of New Zealand, who also did one of my favorite MCU movies, Thor Ragnarok, which is a great movie. But What We Do in the Shadows movie was there, and they made a TV show out of it. And the one character, Laszlo, his best friend, had bought a whole bunch of guy pillows in an MLM scheme. And he was trying to sell them to his friends at a basement get-together, and it just wasn't working because nobody used pillows. He's like, I don't have money to spend on this. I don't got $50. Like, I don't sleep with a pillow. I sleep without a pillow. Like nobody else wanted to buy these things. And he was like, I was trying to sell one of these to my wife because she really likes it, but it's a guy pillow. I'm not allowed to sell it to guys. And like that really struck me because the LuLaRoe thing was like yeah, almost none of the official distributors were male.
Right.
They were almost all female. I mean, there was one woman whose husband did most of the selling on the Facebook live streams, but that's because like the very first one they planned, she wasn't there, and she was like, "I can't get back. You need to start this. It's got to start now. Go do this." And he's kind of like, "Well, we got a green thing here." Like that's how he started out. And then they started making tons of money, and he just was kind of a face at that point. But she was still the official distributor. She was still the official one who was running it. He wasn't part of it officially. Mm-hmm. So like that really struck me. That line of like, she's not a guy. She can't buy a guy pillow. Like I was like, wow, LuLaRoe. Is that one of the side companies for LuLaRoe? Like, of course, there was also supposed to be a joke about the My Pillow.
Right. Yeah, My Pillow guy.
Yeah. Which is its own thing.
Which could be a whole nother video.
It could be a whole nother video, but. The MLMs are just, I think they are predatory. They are pyramid schemes. I don't care how it's handled and what restrictions are put on them. They're predatory.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I know they're legal if you follow certain rules, and it seems like many are, like LuLaRoe's following the rules now. But I still don't think they're a good idea. I don't see that they really have a purpose. I feel like they were designed to beat limitations, obstacles to direct sales. And they're just another way we get annoyed. I don't know if that's legitimate. If you have something that you want to sell, that's a good product, then advertise properly. There's no need to be invasive and use tricks to get people to buy things or to recruit people to sell or whatever. You want to recruit somebody, hire them. That's how legitimate businesses work. Mm-hmm. And I think especially for companies the size of LuLaRoe, I mean, they have so much money. They don't need to play the game with the MLM thing. Amway, they don't need to play that way anymore. Yeah. They're huge. It amazes me that these companies don't convert to like what I consider more legitimate, traditional operating, and they stay as MLMs. I guess that's because of what worked, but
it worked to get them where they are.
Mm-hmm.
Worked to get Amway $8 billion.
It's hard to argue with $8.8 billion, that's for sure. But yeah,
I don't have $8.8 billion. What am I doing wrong? And I think that's
Well, you only have 8.7.
right.
But yeah.
I think that's the mentality though that they're counting on is what am I doing wrong if I don't have all of this money? Because that's part of a mentality that a lot of people have been taught from early age is if you just work hard, you will succeed.
Right.
And there are hundreds of millions of instances of where you can work really, really hard and still not succeed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that message is still, well, just work harder. You're not working hard enough. And I think that's one of the things that Mark was kind of impressing. Like if it's not working for you, you're not working hard enough. Mm-hmm. Work harder. But there's only a certain amount of limit that you can work. Mm-hmm. Right? I think there's a huge overestimation in the media about how much money counselors and therapists make.
It's not a good paying.
It is not a good paying field at all. I mean, I could rattle off numbers and things, but I work with a service that takes care of scheduling and things, so I don't have to pay for scheduling or advertising or anything like that, and I only get a percentage of what we charge the insurance companies. So, and it's actually not a great percentage either, but it is enough for me to live with. But my paychecks still aren't that great, and there is no amount of extra working harder that's going to really increase the amount of money that I can bring in this field. It's, I'm not working 40 hours a week because I don't think that that's sustainable. Mm-hmm. Like that leads to burnout really quickly in this field.
Well, yeah, especially in counseling. Yeah.
A lot of burnout. I mean, sitting with 8 people a day, 5 days a week who are all, having the worst time of their life and having to kind of empathize and take that on and really sit with that. That's burnout waiting to happen. So even if I was working 40 hours a week, that's still not going to make my paychecks, that much substantially much better. Mm-mm. But I mean, I could rattle off a number like I'm making like $40 an hour or $60 an hour, and still like okay, but I can't work 40 hours because it's prohibitive.
Right. Counseling's a 4-day. I think mostly a 4-day work week. That's how most people who are like private practitioners. That's how they work. Mm-hmm. It's equivalent to 4 days.
Yeah. Like I work 5 days a week, but my Monday is like 3 people. Mm-hmm. Friday's like 4.
Well, that's another way to do it. It's equivalent, right? Yeah, of 4 days.
And like right now, my Tuesdays actually have a group at the end. So I see like 2 people in the morning, and then I have group in the evening, and that's great.
That's one of the things I think about agency life. So I was with agency supervisor a long time, and a few different places, and they have what I'll call 40-hour work weeks. Although a lot of people showed up late and left early every day, pretty much. So, let's call it 35. Yeah. And so that's still a lot of hours, 35 hours. Mm-hmm. And they had medical benefits and everything. And many of them did, very good work. But it was still a lot. Like, you can't keep your foot to the floor for 35 hours. There's still going to be times where they're a little bit lazy, taking a break. Like clients calling out, and then no one's filling the schedule back in with other clients. Just, oh, yeah, I'll take that hour off. I'll take those 4 hours off. It was pretty much... So like the point is you can only get so much work out of counselors that's top tier, no matter how you do it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, there's only so much work you can put in. So you've got to find other, if you're going to make more revenue, you got to think outside the box and push. But I can't ask myself like, well, why am I not making $8 billion? I'm a counselor. I have a master's degree. Why am I not making $8 billion? Well, because I'm not a multi-level marketing scheme program. Right. I'm an individual trying to work in this field, and there are other avenues for me to be able to kind of make ends meet and do things. But it takes creativity, education.
There's a degree of luck.
There's a degree of luck. Yeah.
Yeah, there is.
Well, it's exactly for that reason, Mike, that people are drawn to these multi-level marketing companies. Like, I thought I'd be doing so well for myself, and I guess I am, but I think I just need to make a little bit more money.
I should be doing better.
I should be doing better. And so you see a well, just work a little bit, or work a few hours a week, and you'll get a lot more money, or you'll make much more than what you're making at your full-time job, and these promises of what could be.
Yeah, and they overestimate what people in these setups make. Like they have a friend who sells, like, oh, they're making $100,000 a year. Really? Have you checked? Because I doubt it, right? But they have a nice car. Well, they probably have big payments to go with that nice car. Yeah. So yeah, they get it in their mind. It's almost like a self-esteem problem where they don't think of themselves too well, and other people have all the answers for them. Other people will save them. But in real life, other people won't save you.
And I've said before, like the most important thing is finding meaning in life and having purpose. So I mean, like I may not be making tons of money, but the clients I have that have been with me for a long time, they appreciate what I do for them. They appreciate coming in. Some of them have been with me like a year and a half, are still so like they're coming in saying like, this is the best part of my week. Like, and that's where I take a lot of it and be like, okay, this is where I'm a success. Like, I don't need to make $8.7 billion this year as long as this client gets to go home and feel better. Well,
that's I think the rationale with kind of the mental health field is that, well, I think the reason it pays so low, there's a few reasons. I think one is people don't value it the way that we would hope. But also I think a lot of people who get into it want to help people and don't necessarily focus on money, which kind of, in a way, one could argue brings down the rates for everybody, right? Because they're not like pushing for higher rates. But
I think we'll touch on that when we answer one of these questions too.
Well, let's get to that. Yeah, so let's get to I think there's two.
Yep.
We have this time that we selected. We'll wrap up the LuLaRoe MLM portion and we'll move to answering comments. If you want your comment answered on the podcast, please submit it, and we select so many each time and answer them at the end of the videos, end of the podcast. So what do we have tonight, Jeff?
So first one is about the way that we prepare for these episodes. So the question is, do we take notes while watching or reading sources, or how do we keep track as we go along? Any of you guys?
I'll start. So for me, it might be a little different because I have another channel I operate. And I think pretty much every video we've done here, I've covered on my channel at some time. Maybe a while ago, like Betty Broderick, Jodi Arias was a while ago. But other ones more recently, like I just covered LuLaRoe. I just covered Gabby Petito, things like that. So yeah, I have a very particular method for pulling information. I think we talked about this last time a little in the last video we made, which may not be the last one that was released. I don't know.
I think it was the end of the second Gabby Petito.
Okay, so it was the last one we released. So I have a very specific way of kind of organizing information that I collect from various sources. And to produce a video a day, time is of the essence, right? So it's not just the quality. Like I don't have all the time in the world to get the quality. I have to get the quality fairly quickly. So what I do is I try to start out with sources where I can get an outline of kind of everything that happened, like a general chronological timeline, right? So I can frame out like, okay, I get that the case is complex, but basically, how did it go? And I'll start with that, and then I'll start digging through different documents, like more extensive, like books and court documents and all the sources we talked about the other time, different media articles, and I'll start to fill in the outline. Like, okay, I need to move this up, move this in, move this over. And sometimes it can be frustrating because I have to rewrite the script, because different pieces are coming available and they change things. But usually I can kind of work it like blocks, like put everything in blocks and organize it. I take that same preparation and use it for here. Like I bring that same outline and bring it for the podcast. And of course, you guys both do research. That brings in new information and other views, which kind of keeps it interesting. But yeah, that's how I prepare. It's pretty much the same preparation from the videos I make on the other channel.
Okay. So for me, I said in the other video, or the answer, like, what's my favorite way to consume true crime stuff is TV shows. So I do a lot of watching of shows, and it depends on kind of how complex a case is, and where my mind goes while I'm watching or listening to something. Because if I'm consuming, if there's a bunch of different shows like Jodi Arias or JonBenet Ramsey, like there's a ton of different things out there on those. So if I watch like 4 or 5 shows and all the details are kind of matching up, I don't need to write as many notes because it's like, okay, well, there's that. Those are all the same. And they kind of get reiterated to me over and over again watching these different shows. So I don't need to note them down. I keep them in my head. Other times, like with Jeff Pelly, there's very limited stuff on that. And what I was reading, and then like an idea struck me. I was like, okay, well, if he was going to do this, he had to do all of these things. And this one was like, okay, I need to write this down because I'm not going to remember all of these different things. So let me write this out and let me give this and do some of this math. Because I have a great head for numbers or for facts and narratives and things. Numbers are not there, are not up there in my memory storage space. So I tend to write them down. Other than that, mostly I use my phone on the table here with Wikipedia open just to kind of keep me in line with where the story is. Because like I said, I have a great memory for narratives. So it just helps me keep an eye on, okay, well, I remember from this other episode of 48 hours that this was a detail that was on there at this point in that story. Mm-hmm. So let me talk about that. But that's my notes usually consist of the things that strike me as being different.
Almost like bullet points.
Yeah, bullet points. Like in John Benet Ramsey, we did that. And it was the taser thing, or the stun gun thing.
That was great too. That piece, yeah.
Like that. I did notes for that one. I have a Google Doc for it that has that because I was like, wait a minute, that's really interesting. And it was from multiple different sources. I just kind of pulled it together and was like, okay, because that never sat right with me. Mm-hmm. It's a trope. The stun guns knock people out. It's bothered me that Hollywood does that for years. And when they were like, this is what happened to Jean, I'm like, no.
They also do that with chloroform.
Right.
Like you can put chloroform on a rag and...
Hey, does this smell like chloroform? Yeah. It doesn't work that way. Like the Vulcan neck pinch works that way as long as you're a Vulcan.
That's right. Which very few people are around here. Anyway.
Very few people around here are. But yeah, that's what I do.
Very good.
So I have terrible recall of information. I mean, this might be evident at this point. So I have to like kind of, from my perspective, over prepare. And so my notes have to be like more extensive. At least what I write down has to be more extensive than what I probably actually need. So that way, like, it's kind of fresh in my memory, I guess. And I put a lot of things in bold, like things that I want to reference or think I'm going to reference, because doing it on the fly has proven to be not very effective for me. So I got to just like as close to rehearsing it as possible. Because obviously, we're never really sure how the conversation is going to go as we're recording these things. But I want to be able to visually recall it as quickly as possible. And so that's kind of my system for it. Now, in terms of how I take the notes while I'm reading or watching or listening, I kind of, so this is going to be kind of contradictory. I like to watch or listen to the whole thing first, whatever it is, or read the whole thing first, whatever, and not stop and take notes. But at the same time, I definitely don't have the time to go back through whatever I just watched or read or listened to. So then probably like, this is usually how it goes. About halfway through, I'm like, oh, I should be taking notes on that. That was really stupid. But
why haven't I been taking notes this whole time?
Why do I do this every time? And so at the same time, though, I said this last time, if I'm working on something, so I really like to do stuff around the house. And so I put in a new floor and I was listening to stuff the whole time. And I'm not going to stop and take notes because I'm doing something, And so that's fine, whatever. So what I should start doing is like, I don't know, verbally recording things, on a, like, not a tape recorder, but some kind of recording device or something. My phone, I guess, or whatever. But at the same time, I like to think that I can retain some information while I'm just listening to it. But then I go back to do the notes and I'm like, yeah, I definitely didn't do that. Definitely did not retain what I thought I was going to. So it's kind of hit or miss for me sometimes. But, I guess I get kind of more self-aware every time. And I'm like, all right. And perhaps more willing to make that mistake of, I'm just going to listen to it. I know I'm not going to retain everything I want to, but that's okay. I'll go back, maybe I'll listen to it again, try to, hit the key points, whatever. And so it really becomes like so this is a Friday night that we're on right here. So it really becomes like the next day I really have to start listening to these things, or at least start watching things. We're getting a general sense of whatever we're doing next, just to start getting it, and then the notes kind of come from there. So it's a pretty complicated thing, I guess. More complicated than it really needs to be. All right, so next question is your thoughts on the evolution of mental health care and this person gives the examples of from sanatoriums to today's styles would be interesting. It's a pretty loaded question.
Yeah.
It's a long history.
Yeah. So I think, mental health started off in a very weird place. And, mostly we look back to Sigmund Freud, but really the neo-Freudians in general, I think, contribute a lot more than him. Erik Erikson and many other people, I think, built the more meaningful structures that we actually use, apart from like Freud's specific paradigm, although the unconscious mind stayed around a long time. Mm-hmm. We still see that. And then we see the evolution to the behaviorist, B.F. Skinner, Albert Bandura, kind of a more of a social learning angle. He's really one of the greats. He died recently, Albert Bandura. He's really underrated. He was an incredible scientist. And then we see, of course, Aaron Beck and Albert Ellis and Carl Ransom Rogers and all these people that kind of brought in the humanistic and cognitive pieces. Those components put together in the 50s and 60s, I think largely are still dominant today. I don't think they've actually changed that much. I think the difficulty we see recently, and there's been a push to kind of fix this, is more mental health professionals kind of doing their own thing and not worrying about like official training. Like Mike, you went to an actual training, very sophisticated, complex training for narrative therapy, which is a very intriguing therapy. But it has, you learned rules and policies and research, not just, do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
And I think that increasingly, because sometimes our field attracts people who are kind of a little out there when it comes to their connection to science. I guess that's really very generous way to put it. Let's just say that, belief in real investment like DID kind of leads the way for a lot of those practitioners, kind of like what I would consider, mostly fantasy kind of brings them in, and maybe a commitment to, ridiculous positivity and things like that. And they, don't learn about Aaron Beck's CBT. They don't learn about Ellis and REBT. They just learn about the law of attraction and life coach stuff. Mm-hmm. But I think that accreditation and standards have kept that at bay. But it is the demon outside the door all the time. It's the kidney demon there. That's always
put some oils on it.
Just put some essential oils.
It's always knocking, right? It's always trying to get into our field. I think our field is viewed as vulnerable because we don't attract the same number of scientists as other professions like physics and biology, which that's true. I get it. But I think we still need to maintain a commitment to what actually works. Like, what can science show us works? That doesn't mean there isn't a creative and human component to what we do. There certainly is an art to the science. But that exact type of thinking can be taken and lead up, can lead to EMDR. Right? Like, just a theory that took an actual theory and just has a made-up part, and now you learn both. Like, what? How did we get here? So, but that's okay. EMDR can be used to treat DID, so it's all good.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my thoughts on kind of the progression in a nutshell.
I think that for me, I go much further back in the history of mental health treatment because a lot of the history has created the stigma that we have to kind of combat today in treating mental health stuff. And that goes way back before there were sanatoriums, before there's anything. There was just, okay, this person's really weird, get them out of here. Like they get shunted off to the side of society. And then at some point in the medieval era, it was, well, let's house them in monasteries. Mm-hmm. Bring them into monasteries, and they can be taken care of by the monks there as part of the monks' penance and things. And that became a major thing for a very long time. But when those monasteries ended up being close to cities, there was or even in cities, it became really disruptive. Because many of the people there were not receiving any kind of treatment other than, well, make sure they're fed and watered. And there were people screaming their heads off from delusions and hallucinations and just being in pain. And they were making a lot of noise at a lot of various different times of day. And one of the most famous ones in London, people would actually go by and just wait to listen. And the chaos inside became synonymous with the name of the monastery. And it's now a word we have in the English language called bedlam, which, the utter chaos of the meaning of bedlam comes from that, from people screaming their heads off. And then there was a realization that, hey, these people are sick. They're not just, demon touched or possessed. Like, let's treat them as being diseased. But again, that was kind of a separate them out. That's when we get into the sanitariums and kind of stuff. And then Freud came along and was like, we can make this a science. And we can study these people and we might be able to cure them. And we started into treatment, which was great until we got to the state hospital thing in the, 30s through the 60s. There were police departments that used to use mental health hospitals or insane asylums, as they were often called, as a secondary way of holding people.
Yeah, without a warrant?
Without a warrant, without anything. They would just bring them by, look at the doctor and say, we need you to put a psych hold on this person indefinitely. And then they would sit there. There's one story, this may be an apocryphal story, but there was one out of California where a guy was admitted to one of these places in Los Angeles. And the officer who brought him in and arranged for him to stay there was killed that night in a shootout. So never came back for him. And the psychiatrist who was overseeing this guy's care just kept him there. And then a couple of years later, he went off and got himself another job. So another psychiatrist came in and just looked at his file and said, oh, he repeatedly says that he's not crazy and refuses to admit that there might be a problem, so we have to do more work with him. And just continued going. And the guy was in the facility for 25 years before another psychiatrist finally was like, why are you here? And he told him, I was here because I was brought in by an LAPD officer. And when he tracked it back, he found out that, yeah, that's what happened. And he sat there in that facility for that long because cops could do that. They could get away with it at that point. There's a movie starring Angelina Jolie called Changeling that actually had that same thing happen to that kid, which is a very good movie and based on historical events. And that actually happened to that woman. Like, she was locked up because she refused to believe that the LAPD had found her son.
It was a different person.
Because it was a different person. It wasn't her son. They just were trying to close the case. But there were stories from all over the country of, predominantly men bringing their wives to asylums and saying, she's crazy. She's got depression, or she's got, something, or hysteria.
Right, hysteria, yeah.
Yeah, she's got hysteria. You need a lot, we need to keep her here. And the psychiatrist would be like, okay, well, I'm not sure if that's really the case. And if it's the case, you can, we'll keep her here. And then a $50 bill would go into the pocket and be like, oh, yeah, she's got hysteria. And they would keep her there. And as long as that money came in once a month, that psychiatrist would keep them there. And usually it was a matter of the guy wanting to have an affair and his wife not appreciating that. So she ended up getting locked up. Now, all of those very terrible practices in all of those places. Nurse Ratched in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is probably one of the most evil characters in cinema history. She's in the top 50, I'm sure.
Also in a series after that, right?
Yeah, and Ratched on, I think it was Netflix.
I think so, yeah.
Arguably one of the most evil, but honestly because she's one of the most realistic.
Well, especially for the movie with Jack Nicholson, yeah.
for that time period, that was a pretty accurate depiction of some of the people who would live and work in those environments, and were terrible. Fortunately, they did get shut down for the most part, or at least officially shut down and then reopened under
lawsuits were filed and community care and all that. Yeah.
And so all sorts of things changed, but that still was an aspect of put it away. Get it away from mainstream society. Nobody wants to think about the crazy people. And it was the 60s when that started to change. And then when we didn't have places to keep these people, they were just in society in our face, and we still wanted to find ways of, getting rid of them. So, mental health treatment, let's put them in treatment, and then we can forget about them. And that really became the way things were until much, much more recently, when people started realizing, hey, people can get better. And a lot more people are suffering from these things than we would have thought. So let's actually start treating them. But the mental health community, as we are growing as a profession, because we are counselors, are the biggest growing portion of the mental health treatment community by far. We still have a long way to go to fight to get people to overcome that idea that mental health treatment is something to keep on the down low. Talk about it. I go to therapy. It was just like 20 years ago where people would whisper behind somebody's back, did you know that Maud goes to therapy?
Yeah, there was a stigma with being ill and being treated.
Mm-hmm. Right. But, and fortunately now, I did see a meme that talked about exactly that. It's like, people are like, did you hear that Maud goes to therapy? And then, like, nowadays, millennials are just like, yeah, my therapist and I were talking about this the other day. And it's like, it's becoming a much more open thing, but it still needs to spread further.
Yeah, the stigma keeps who knows how many people out of treatment. It's terrible. And yeah, I agree, it's much better now. But still a huge problem. It started out as a massive problem.
Yeah. Yes. And there's still subsections of different communities that still hold that stigma really, really strongly. And some are like you don't need mental health treatment. You don't need a therapist. Just go to church. Mm-hmm. Or the idea of going to therapy doesn't even occur until somebody says, hey, have you ever tried therapy? And they're like, no, why would I?
Right.
Nothing wrong with me.
Hasn't been normalized. Yeah.
Right.
The thing that has always struck me. Before I do that, you mentioned Aaron Beck, Dr. Grande, and I was curious. Curious about him. 100 years old this year.
That's right. I think he still works. Right?
I would imagine so. I don't see it right here, but I would imagine so.
I know he did up to a few years ago, anyway. Yeah.
He'd been married 71 years. I did my math correctly. 71 years, which is incredible. Like
he has an amazing story. I remember years ago in my doctoral program being on a project to study like Aaron Beck specifically, and there wasn't a lot available. Like he doesn't share a lot, but there was some things available, and he had this, I think, a phobia of tunnels that he had overcome, and some depression from his mother dying, and that's why he developed CBT and just really, or CT, I guess, cognitive therapy. But an amazing individual who's made contributions for 100 years. I mean, it's incredible. Yeah.
So one of the things that's always struck me is one of the main Halloween type attractions are asylums, right? Like that's a big thing now. Asylums that have shut down. Companies have made those into attractions, right? Look how scary this was. Look what we used to do to people that we didn't know what else to do with, right? We just let's beat it out of them, or let's just keep them locked up and isolated from other people enough to just get that out of them, or whatever the thought process was. And you go through those places, and it is genuinely scary. You see the kind of tools and items that they used to use to treat these people, right? These people that were crazy or just didn't fit in society or whatever. And you look at it and you're like, wow, they actually used this thing. And they thought it was actually doing some good for this person or something. And it is genuinely scary, right? So it's, it made you realize, like, I don't blame anybody for not wanting to get help if that's where they thought they were going, right, at that point. Now, of course, we made a lot of progress in helping that stigma, but it still exists, of course, and people are worried about somebody's going to think I'm crazy, or somebody's going to think that I'm just way too much and I have to be sent somewhere or whatever. And so there's a lot to it, and there's a lot of work still to be done. But I'm thankful for all the good people out there that positively contribute to that stigma being eradicated. One of the things that made me think of as well was a song from the band Metallica called Sanitarium. And I never looked at the lyrics of, as many times as I've heard it, I've never looked at the lyrics of this song. And it outlines a progression that we're familiar with, of somebody tells me, or gives me this idea that I'm crazy, or that I'm whatever it might be, crazy, or I have something wrong with me, or whatever. And so then they put me in a situation or in a system that is there to help me, but it actually ends up just encouraging this idea more. So in this case, Sanitarium, they send me somewhere, and because of my environment, because of this environment of fear that they've kind of built in this place, it reinforces the idea, well, I must be crazy because this is what they're telling me, right? So I just stay in this environment. I never get to leave. I never get to go anywhere else. And I'm just, it's reinforced in me that I must be crazy and this is where I belong. So of course, with that, this rage builds up, and it's like, because what they actually need is not what they're actually getting, right? So this rage builds up, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because, oh, they're getting mad, they're getting worse, right? We need to medicate them more. We need to over-medicate them. We need to do more to help them, to fix them, And so their rage builds because they're just stuck in this place. They're not actually getting any help, right? And that's something that we don't have asylums anymore necessarily, but that's something that happens in families, happens in relationships still. And so it's a systemic problem that we've kind of dealt with on a government level, maybe, but it's one that is still, there's so much, there's a lot to be done with like awareness and things on a family level, I guess you could say, or relationship level, personal level. When you're in a relationship or you're in a family and you're constantly being told one thing about yourself, and you never realize that there's something different out there, right? Until perhaps you come to therapy, or you go away to college, or you're at a friend's house or whatever, and you realize this is different than what I'm used to. And you start to question, maybe there's something wrong with my environment, right? Or how people have taught me, or how they're telling me how I am, or whatever. And you start to doubt that, right? And then change potentially starts to come from that. And it's a much better environment than just, let's just keep them somewhere isolated from everything and hope that they're better, right? So it's a fascinating thing to think about. And every time that we see it in therapy, see that kind of light bulb moment for somebody to realize things can actually be different. I don't have to keep doing what I've always done. Pretty incredible to see that. But sadly, of course, we know not a lot of people experience that. They just stay stuck in routines and in the same environment. So, there's a dark part to it as well. But I choose to focus on the optimistic side of it as well, that there is hope, that there is better things out there, and that's possible for many people. That's my 2 cents on it.
I think pop culture does often encapsulate some of those things, like experiences in an asylum or a state hospital. There's a movie came out several years ago directed by Zack Snyder called Sucker Punch. It's actually a phenomenal movie when you get down to like the actual themes that are underlying the whole thing. But it's also got some really great cinematography and special effects. I think it's a really great movie. But the overall is the story of a young girl who's put in an asylum by her abusive stepfather, and she's then used while she's in there. She's taken advantage of, and the orderlies are actually utilizing her in various ways that are not appropriate. She's being exploited quite a bit, but she kind of retreats into fantasy and then retreats further into fantasy when those things are going on. I just think it's a great movie from a mental health aspect. Looking at that one, if you haven't seen it, I do recommend it. A lot of people don't get it unless they come at it from that perspective. Mm-hmm. But pop culture can tell us a lot of stuff about that kind of thing, about how things are viewed in a given time.
Yeah, it can capture the zeitgeist, right? And certainly mental health is a part of that, and has changed quite a bit in, I think, mostly positive ways, but some unfortunate ways as well. Or not changed enough, I guess you could say, in some ways. So good. Those are the questions we had this time. Again, any questions, please put them in the comment section, and we select so many and cover them at the end of the podcast.
Before we close, I did want to bring attention to the new accoutrement we have on the tables. I mean, over on Dr. Grande's table over here, we do have a new red truck for Gary Ridgway. We covered the Gary Ridgway Green River killings, and the red truck seemed to be a central thing in that particular case. Over on Jeff's desk over here, we actually have, sitting on our gravesite, is now a set of golf clubs. That's in honor of Scott Peterson. He was an avid golfer, and his first story about where he was golfing that day. And when he was caught, he was headed to the golf course as well. And because of the votes we had on our first Gabby Petito video, we have a white van. I offered a white van or the Utah arch, and more people chose the van. So I printed the van and painted it up, and it's right there.
Very nice.
For this particular episode, I'm going to put it out there for our viewers, either a unicorn or a pair of leggings.
I mean, both, like, I'm trying to picture really good options. Yeah. So that'll be a tough one.
Yeah. Can the unicorn be wearing leggings?
Ooh, that'd be tough. I mean, I can do it.
That's another option.
That's in the paint job.
Well, all you got to do with the paint job is find an image on Google and change it by 20%. You're fine.
Right.
You're good.
I'll just use a LuLaRoe image, change it by 20%, put that design on them.
And that'll be done.
Unicorn.
Yeah, done. Yeah.
Although the unicorn would have two sets of leggings, I guess, right?
It could.
Yeah,
it could.
Depending. All right.
Yeah.
I'll do a standing set of leggings or the unicorn. Put that out there.
Very good. So that'll wrap up today's episode of Alien Lizard Humanoids. This was about LuLaRoe, and to some extent the documentary LuLaRich, definitely worth watching. I think it was about 4 hours or so, something in that neighborhood, on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
So very good. We'll be back pretty soon with Alien Lizard Humanoids and, of course, the murder part. I think we have a movie part that'll be coming up soon as well. Again, please put any comments in the comment section. We do read them. And if you have any specific questions, put those in as well. Again, we'll be back soon. Thanks for watching.